an impact on their joint venture in China. However, this merger gives PSA a crucial access to North America through Chrysler and its successful brand Jeep. In Paris, Caroline Connon, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And staying with news from the car industry, Tesla's considering cutting the price of its China-built cars next year. The price of the Model 3 sedans could be cut by 20% or more. Tesla's betting the move will help lure buyers as demand slows in China. Sales of electric vehicles have fallen for months, and the government scaled back subsidies.
Just a quick check on Pearson shares. So we heard earlier this morning that it sold its remaining stake in Penguin for $675 million. And we're actually seeing the shares gain off the back of that here 7 minutes into the open. Right now we're up 4.4%. But to get back to other stocks, FedEx has cut its profit forecast for the second straight quarter. More from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Weak international demand hurt sales, and the company is ramping up investment to handle soaring e-commerce deliveries. FedEx was also reeling after Amazon heightened competitive tensions this week by banning third-party sellers from using the courier, citing poor service. The two companies ended most of their direct business together earlier this year, and FedEx cited lost business from a large customers hurting revenue. Beyond ongoing weakness in Europe and Asia, FedEx's sales were also hurt by the late timing of the peak holiday season, which began after the quarter ended this year. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And the latest out of the Fed. Two of the central bank presidents say the Fed should hold rates next year, given the solid growth outlook. Boston's Eric Rosengren called the economy well-positioned for 2020. Speaking to Bloomberg, Dallas chief Robert Kaplan was less upbeat, but agreed policymakers have done enough to support growth following 3 consecutive rate cuts.
I've already got baked into my outlook. We're going to have weak manufacturing next year, sluggish global growth, pretty sluggish business investment, but with a strong consumer. There would have to be some material change from that outlook.
But both of them rejected another call from President Trump for more easing.
And despite those messages, investors are still pricing in more Fed cuts. That's led Citigroup to predict the 10-year Treasury yield will hit a record low 1.25% in 2020. Citi strategists say the high probability of a recession within a year and weaker global PMIs will force the FOMC to resume a full easing cycle by 2021. And we talked about this at the top of the show. Other banks that have published outlook, Soc Gen is targeting a 120 handle on the 10-year Treasury yield. Deutsche Bank predicting 190, Rabobank 1%. So those are all the bullish calls. On the flip side, Goldman Sachs has the highest target, a 225 handle, which is in line with the fact that Goldman is among the banks calling for copper to extend its rally along with Jefferies. And they both cite increasing demand and recovering Chinese growth.
And what about Double Line's Jeffrey Gundlach? Well, he predicts yields will climb to 2.15%. Gundlach cited the recent rise in copper prices and the stagnant gold as signs the economic activity is in good shape, and that puts him at odds with the banks. But in line with those comments we heard just now from the regional Fed presidents, you see a healthy labour market and inflation inching towards a target.
Yeah, if you look at a chart of the copper-gold ratio and Treasury yields, there is actually a pretty strong correlation, or at least there has been for a lot of this year. Now, coming back to the UK's credit outlook has been upgraded by both S&P and Fitch. That's after Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party won a decisive majority in last week's election. S&P raised the outlook from negative to stable. Fitch took the UK off rating watch negative, and it removes the immediate threat of a downgrade. But the agency did maintain a negative outlook for the UK.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, will not be attending next month's World Economic Forum in Davos. He's branding his administration the people's government. And we've learned from officials that they don't want to undermine that image by the side of the Prime Minister with the global elite. Johnson's hasn't always been against attending the summit because he went at least twice when he was Mayor of London.
Those are your top stories for the latest in global news. Here's Bloomberg's Sandra Kilhoff. And Sandra, you begin with US politics and impeachment.
Yes, good morning, Naira. President Trump is condemning Democrats in a blistering 6-page letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro says it comes ahead of today's impeachment vote in the House.
More due process was afforded to those accused in the Salem witch trial, says the president, adding in his missive to Speaker Pelosi, no intelligent person believes what you're saying. The president says he looks forward to a Senate trial, which may be brief. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shot down Democrats' proposal to call more witnesses to testify. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Australia has endured its hottest day on record, with temperatures soaring to 40.9 degrees Celsius yesterday. There are still more than 100 bushfires in New South Wales, and Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons says it's only going to get worse.
Firefighters, emergency services and all those communities are going to be challenged with a new threat as we head into this heatwave conditions that are going to dominate much of the state.
French President Macron and labour unions remain in deadlock over his proposed pension reform. Bloomberg's James Regan says hundreds of thousands of demonstrators once again took to the streets.
The government hopes to meet with union leaders in an effort to reopen dialogue over Macron's proposals to introduce a universal points-based pension system and raise the retirement age. Questions remain over whether strikes that have hit transportation will continue over the Christmas period. In Paris, James Regan, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Israel's economy is now beginning to suffer as the country heads for its third election in a year. Bloomberg's Ivan Livingston reports.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party is preparing for a bitter leadership primary later this month, ahead of another general election in March. And a period of paralysis is pushing off crucial investments and reforms, while the national debt load rose last year for the first time in nearly a decade. In Tel Aviv, Ivan Livingston, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Sandra, thanks for that. Now, here are the events you should be watching closely today. ECB's Christine Lagarde will be speaking in honour of the outgoing ECB board member, Benoît Cœur, at 8:30 a.m. London time. Over in Germany, the IFO survey is going to be released at 9. The November readings showed the slowdown had reached its low point. There's a reasonable chance that improvement will be recorded in December. And at 12, midday, Chancellor Angela Merkel will take questions on behalf of our government from Bundestag members for an hour. We'll be listening out for any of her thoughts on Huawei. Later in the US, the full House of Representatives is planning to vote on President Donald Trump's impeachment, with a likely Senate trial to begin in January. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Today, nearly all business is international business. The same goes for business disputes. That's why the International Center for Dispute Resolution provides a faster, more efficient approach to dispute resolution across borders. Backed by the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of dispute resolution services. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs on Bloomberg Technology.
Apple Wallet, Uber Money, Google checking accounts. It seems like everywhere you look, big tech is getting into the financial services game. So what's that trend doing to fintech? Enrique Dubagras is here to answer. He is the CEO of Brex. The company minted itself a unicorn this past summer with a valuation of $2.6 billion. Enrique, welcome to the program. And I wonder, as you sort of take a look forward, given how big competition is, how competitive this space is, where do you see the next sectors in terms of the biggest opportunities?
So I believe that there's a clear distinction between distribution and actual innovation in financial services. I think a lot of the big tech companies, what they're doing is just creating new distribution channels for existing products. So, for example, Amazon's credit card is issued by JP Morgan and American Express. And, I truly believe that if there's no technology development in the back end, it won't change much. I think a lot of the opportunity are for both fintech firms and non-fintech firms that actually rebuild the technology behind it and don't use the technologies built by the bank.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Roger Hearing. Time for a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now over to First Word Breaking News Desk in Berlin for today's morning call. Here's Richard Jones. Richard, good morning.
Good morning, Roger. Most Asian equity markets are flat to down in today's session. The Nikkei 225 was down by 0.6%. The Hang Seng and Kospi were both steady, with the Shanghai Composite down 0.2. U.S. equity futures are little changed, with E-mini S&Ps and E-mini NASDAQ futures unwinding early losses to now trade steady. European equities are mixed at the open, with the Euro Stoxx 50 and the CAC Caron opening up by 0.1%, with the DAX underperforming, down 0.1%. The FTSE 100 is the standout this morning, up 0.3, as the pound falls for a second day following the sharp sell-off on Tuesday. Turning to bond markets, the U.S. 10-year yield is trading 1 basis point lower at 1.87%. The 10-year German Bund yield is trading steady at minus 0.29%. In FX, the Bloomberg Dollar Index is little changed, with the Swedish krona the standout in the G10 space, down 0.4% versus the greenback ahead of the Riksbank rate announcement tomorrow. Looking ahead to data, the highlight in Europe today will be the German IFO readings and Eurozone and UK inflation prints. In terms of central bank speakers, from the ECB we get President Lagarde speaking, with the Fed's Brainard also on the calendar this morning, as is the ECB's Curre. That's it for me. For more macro breaking news, it's SQUA Go on the Bloomberg Terminal. Roger?
Thanks so much indeed, Richard. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Sandra Killhoff with more on what's going on around the world.
Good morning, Roger. Indian students have condemned the police's violent handling of protests. Farooq Naqvi was among those protesting a controversial law that bars undocumented Muslims from seeking citizenship.
This is not acceptable. We will continue to raise our voice against the Citizenship Amendment Act, and we will continue to speak up for the rights of our students across this country.
But Indian Home Minister Amit Shah has defended the law, saying there is no chance it will be repealed. Reports from Washington say the U.S. has little chance of stopping the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, despite several years of trying to bring the project to a halt. Sources in the administration say the pipeline is nearly complete and that sanctions passed this week will have no effect. And the long-running protests in Hong Kong have forced the cancellation of the traditional New Year's Eve fireworks. It follows a recommendation by local police and will instead be replaced by an enhanced version of the daily light show over the harbour. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Killhoff. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Sandra, thank you so much. Now let's get to Bloomberg News compiling 5 things to watch for miners in the year to come. And we've been doing this across all sectors, actually, but today we're focusing on the mining heavyweights with Bloomberg equities reporter Michael Masika. And Michael, it's a great moment to talk about this because we've been talking about the copper-gold ratio all morning and basically the rally in some metals based on increased prospects perhaps for China now that we have phase 1 of the US-China deal out of the way to some extent. Given that the mining industry in general is pretty good when it comes to dividends and mining stocks have been underperforming the broader European index, can we sort of surmise from this that a lot of the outlook for mining stocks in 2020 is going to come down to the US-China trade talks?
Well, good morning. Yes, I mean, that's an important thing that just happened, the phase 1 trade deal, because miners have been the victim of the trade war over the past year. They had their earnings coming down. They were downgraded by many analysts. and there were fears that China slowing down and the trade war, the demand for commodities would be much lower. So is this a big turnaround? It's a turnaround. There's still a bit of skepticism about how it's going to spur demand for commodities and then help miners. I think the big point here will be what China will do internally in terms of fiscal stimulus, not just the trade deal, and if this stimulus is going to be commodity intensive, meaning infrastructure, large works, building works in the country, real estate. This will be important for miners next year.
Well, Michael, let's get into specifics. I mean, Nera mentioned copper there. Where are we with copper, do you think, going into 2020?
Well, the good thing with copper, I would say, is China doesn't produce it, so they need to import it. So the more copper intensive the more copper they need for their infrastructure, the better. So it's not so much about the trade deal with the US, it's more about what's going to be the internal demand for copper in China. And at the moment, it's looking better. A lot of analysts or strategists believe copper will keep rising next year. The prices just started to inflect, actually, because it's just a December spike that we had on the metal. So this is likely to continue if we get some more improvements on the Chinese front. Yeah.
But how closely correlated are mining stocks with the underlying metals? Are there some individual stocks to pull out here? Can we just talk about them in broad brush strokes and assume that if base metals recover in 2020, so will all the mining stocks?
So that will help. There's been a little decorrelation between a little like decoupling, I would say, between the industrial metals and miners over the past year or so. But the reality is, copper is very much in the driving seat there. If we have like a big rise in copper prices, that will help miners. I would say you have two smaller miners that are pure plays, which are Antofagasta and Cas Mineral, and those two are very, very sensitive to copper prices. So that's an important driver. Outside copper, I think iron ore is very important. I mean, the two largest miners, Rio Tinto and BHP Group, have about 40% of their revenues in iron ore, and that will be a major driver for them. And so it will be a major driver for the index because they have such a big weight on the index.
And you mentioned iron ore there. We've seen quite a lot of swings in that. Yeah. Give us the picture for 2020.
So iron ore, if you look at the swap curves for the next few months, you see iron ore is expected to come down. It had a crazy ride in 2019 indeed. Because there were some problems in the supply with Vale in Brazil having all the issues that we spoke about all year long. But this is normalizing.
Yeah.
So Vale is expected to supply a much higher tonnage of iron ore next year. So we can't expect iron ore prices to go crazy again.
All right. Well, we'll see if anything goes crazy in the gold sector in terms of a consolidation wave as well. That's another thing to look out for. Great story on the Bloomberg. Have a look at it. Thank you so much, Bloomberg equities reporter Michael Masika, on the outlook for the mining sector in 2020. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Dish Network Chairman Charlie Ergen will resume his testimony today in the antitrust case against the proposed merger of Sprint and T-Mobile. Ergen said yesterday that his company is ready to compete from day one for wireless phone customers once it acquires the assets that will clear the way for the Sprint T-Mobile merger. A small step higher for stocks yesterday was enough to create a new round of records. Rob Croce at Mellon Investment thinks the rally will roll on.
It really looks like we've got an all clear here going into the end of the year. The little sort of blip downward we saw in early Q4 seems to have cleared. So we see a very short-term, very bullish picture for stocks.
Wall Street's main averages are sharply higher for the year, with the Nasdaq leading the way. General Mills will report its quarterly results before the opening bell. The stock is up nearly 34% this year, despite 2 sales misses in a row. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hello, I'm here to tell you that age really does bring wisdom, and you may still have plenty to contribute. At Eisner-Amper, we're successful at helping business owners and entrepreneurs assess and plan for the future, as well as maximize where you are in the present. If you're curious about how to plan for both your professional and personal future, come and talk to us. I'm Lisa Stewart, Principal in charge of the Center for Family Business Excellence, and I'd love to help you to find the right path forward. You can find us at eisneramper.com/family.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk. This week at Tesco, whole beef roasting joints and whole legs of lamb are half price. That's a whole lot of halves off a whole lot of wholes. What a mouthful. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Max 2 per customer, selected stores, excludes Express, ends 31st of December.
Christmas, a time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 4 of the league's top teams are in action as the Lakers take on the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Rockets taking on the Clippers at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. 11-2. This Thursday, the Lakers are at the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Rockets are at the Clippers 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
It was 1970, and a pregnant Air Force captain found herself in a bind.
If you're pregnant, you cannot be active duty. If you have a child, you cannot be active duty.
So she sued. This week on The Media examines the case that almost set the course for women's reproductive rights. Instead, to Justice Ginsburg's dismay, we got Roe v. Wade. On this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chahich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Well, 30 minutes into the equity market open, we've actually turned into the green now on the Stock 600, up 0.1% after opening in the red and after closing in the red by 0.7% yesterday. Looking across regional equity benchmarks, again, a little bit more green on the screen. The FTSE 100 up almost 0.2%. The CAC 40 is flat. The DAX still in the red by 0.1%, but the IBEX and FTSE MIB both trading higher by 0.3%. The S&P 500 got to another record yesterday by 1 point. Futures point to a pretty muted session today. S&P, Nasdaq and Dow futures all trading dead flat. Lots of calls out there in terms of the 10-year Treasury yield and where it ends up in 2020. You've got Citigroup saying we're going to get to a 125 handle. That will be a record low. SocGen targeting 120. Goldman Sachs, on the other hand, looking at 225. And Jeff Gundlach out there saying, look at the copper gold ratio. It's at its highest since July. It's really highly correlated with the 10-year Treasury yield. And with the copper gold ratio moving higher, you're going to see that 10-year Treasury yield move to a 215 handle. The 10-year yield today is down a basis point on a 187 handle. 10-year bund yield steady, negative 30. 10-year gilt yield slips by a basis point. In FX, we saw a touch of weakness in the yuan. In the Asian session, both the onshore and offshore going through 7 again with some liquidity injections from the PBOC. But over in G10, it's cable that's really stealing the limelight, extending losses from yesterday down 0.2% after it dropped as much as 1.7% yesterday, with that no deal risk coming back into investors' minds. 131.08. How quickly and how soon could we get to 120 if things get worse? A number of people saying it's not that far off a prospect. In terms of how commodities are shaping up today, copper slightly on the back foot, down 0.4%. Oil also weaker following stockpiles. API data, WTI down 0.7%, 60.52. Brent at 65.81. Roger.
Okay, let's look at some of today's top stories. Now, the UK credit outlook looks better to both to S&P Global Ratings and to Fitch Ratings, as Bloomberg's George Shanker explains.
The moves came after Boris Johnson's Conservative Party won a majority in last week's election. At S&P, the country's outlook was shifted to stable from negative. Analysts cited the diminished risk of a no-deal Brexit. Meanwhile, Fitch took the UK off rating watch negative. It removes the immediate threat of the downgrade, but the agency did maintain a negative outlook for the UK. In London, George Shanker, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Lots of corporate news today, starting with Tesla. It's considering cutting the price of its China-built cars next year. The price of the Model 3 sedans could be cut by 20% or more. Tesla's betting the move will help lure buyers as demand slows in China. Sales of electric vehicles have fallen for months. After the government scaled back subsidies. I got there, Roger. The call is back.
You did. My sympathies. Meanwhile, FedEx has cut its profit forecast for the second straight quarter. That's as weak international demand hurt sales. FedEx and Amazon cut most of their business ties this year. That also weighing on sales for the delivery company. It's also suffering from weaker pricing and trade tensions. And the boards of Fiat Chrysler and the Peugeot maker PSA Group have signed off on their combination. It's a deal that will create the world's fourth largest car maker. The new company will be led by PSA CEO Carlos Tavares. Let's pick up on that, more with that story with Bloomberg's Caroline Connon. She joins us live from Paris. So, Caroline, just fill us in on the details on this. Is it, do you think, was it almost inevitable this would happen this way?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the deal was initially reported just 6 weeks ago. So the fact that it took only 6 weeks to come to a binding agreement clearly means that the two parties had already been discussing this deal for many months. So it's pretty much as we expected with this 50-50 merger. As you mentioned, Carlos Tavares will be the CEO of the new entity. John Elkann will be chairman. And before closing the deal, what we learned is that Fiat shareholders will actually get a special dividend of 5.5 billion euros. PSA will distribute its stake in car parts supplier Faurecia to its investors. And then both the group, PSA and FCA, also promised to distribute an extra 1.1 billion euro dividend next year.
Caroline, great to have you with us. I'll try and get this question out before my cough comes back. But talk us through the expected synergies, but also opportunities from growth from this combination.
So the synergies are expected to be about 3.7 billion euros. They're going to have most of their production made on 2 different platforms. What also PSA Group has been promising to the French state is that there will be no plant closures and no job cuts. So of course, you might wonder how you make synergies if you don't close any plants. But PSA and FCA say they will actually, on these two platforms have better investments when it comes to automation, electrification, which of course is the new challenge of the next few decades for the car industry, especially when you see the slowdown of car sales at the moment. You got the numbers yesterday in Europe. We expect a flat year for car sales despite the November boost we had. So clearly these two groups expect nearly 4 billion euros in synergies. We'll see how this pans out.
And of course, the presence in North America is the big thing with this. The power that it will give is going bigger than Ford now. It's quite something, isn't it?
Yes, for Peugeot, they've been absent from the U.S. market for more than 2 decades. So clearly by merging with FCA, they combine also with Chrysler and the very popular brand Jeep. So clearly for Peugeot, the main benefit is to gain access to this U.S. market again. Something they actually had planned. They wanted to make a comeback over the next few years, so that will be faster. The Fiat CEO, Mike Manley, also dismissed concerns on the call earlier this morning over the General Motors lawsuit against Chrysler, because remember, Chrysler is also being accused by General Motors of bribery and corruption. So FCA so far has denied any wrongdoing, but some analysts say that could actually cost Chrysler several billion of dollars in damages. So we'll see how this pans out also in North America.
Yeah, and speaking of America, I mean, the Dongfeng stake, and we've seen Dongfeng has said that it's going to see its stake decline to 4.5% from 12%. If we tie that to America, the reason that stake attracted attention was because of the possibility it could interfere with US regulatory approval. So now that we've got that news of that stake being reduced, have most of the obstacles to this deal been removed, Caroline?
So I was talking about this GM possible lawsuit. That's still one obstacle. There's also Italian tax authorities who are trying to get as much as $1.5 billion from Fiat in unpaid taxes when they acquired Chrysler a few years back. But clearly, with the reduction of this stake of Dongfeng, the Chinese who owned a 12% stake in PSA Group from 12% to 4.5%, this does remove some regulatory concern. You heard Larry Kudlow in the U.S. Who said he was trying to examine this deal with a lot of scrutiny because of this Chinese stake in PSA.
All right, Caroline, thanks very much indeed. Caroline Conan there, live on the line from Paris, talking about that merger creating the world's fourth largest car maker.
Let's get the world news with Sandra Kilhoff. Hi, Sandra.
Good morning, Naira. Australia's had its hottest day on record, with temperatures surging to 40.9 degrees Celsius yesterday. It comes as more than 100 wildfires continue to burn in New South Wales. State Premier Gladys Berejiklian warns that the next few days will be very difficult.
Given not only the number of fires that are burning across the state, but also the heat wave conditions that will be evident Thursday and even under worse circumstances on Saturday.
President Trump today faces an impeachment vote in the U.S. House. He will then go on trial in the Senate, where senators are obliged to act as independent jurors. But Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said Republican senators will vote against the process. Here's Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Minority Senate leader.
The president has something to hide, and Republican senators, too many of them, are intent in helping him hide it. It's clear that Senator McConnell wants to use the Senate to help participate in a cover-up.
1 year ago, Russian President Vladimir Putin promised a pickup in economic growth. But as Bloomberg's Natasha Doff explains, that didn't happen.
The growth rate of 1.8% he forecast for 2019 isn't likely even to exceed 1.3%. The government is hoping that higher spending will boost economic performance next year. But Putin's goal of 3% remains well out of reach. In Moscow, Natasha Doff, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Macau to celebrate 20 years of Chinese rule. Bloomberg's Ian Marlowe says Beijing is sending increasingly stern messages to neighboring territory Hong Kong.
Xi is expected to use his visit to send a message to the protest-stricken financial hub of Hong Kong, some 50 kilometers to the east. Stop protesting, work with us, and get rich. During a similar anniversary visit to Hong Kong 2 years ago, Xi urged the city to profit from China, not defy it. In Hong Kong, Ian Marlowe, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Sandra, thank you for that. Now, coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we're going to be talking to Craig Earlham. He's senior market analyst at Oanda. We'll be finding out his thoughts about whether the rise in equities is likely to continue into 2020. And there's interesting comments from Fed speakers about the prospects for 2020 and a possible hold on rate cuts for the future. We'll talk about that in just a moment. This is Bloomberg.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with The Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, A Place for Mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-391-1755. That's 1-800-391-1755.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 60.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
I'll give you 20p for it. 50p? £5.
Isn't it great when you get more for something than you expected? Scrap or part exchange with Vauxhall and we'll give you a guaranteed £4,000 towards a new Crossland-X or Grandland-X with 4.9% APR representative. Search Vauxhall Trade It. T's and C's and restrictions apply. Trade-in car must be registered in your name for at least 90 days. Available on conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status 18+. Vauxhall Finance. Other deposit contributions may be available if you don't have a trade-in vehicle.
There's no way I'm sanding these floorboards by hand.
Want to power through your timber projects? Head to the B&Q Tool Shop. Get hands-on in-store with our wide range of electric sanders and planers, including the McAllister Random Orbit Sander for just £30. The B&Q Tool Shop. You can do it when you B&Q it.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Back to throw, fires right on the slant. Caught, touchdown.
He leaps and he surges in, touchdown.
This Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the lights shine bright on the Las Vegas Bowl. Washington Huskies head coach Chris Peterson will coach his final game before retiring as he takes on his former school, the Boise State Broncos.
Down to the 5, he leaps for the end zone, and he is in.
To listen to this and every bowl game, just search college football today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Slam dunk.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 4 of the league's top teams are in action as the Lakers take on the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Rockets taking on the Clippers at 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
11-2.
This Thursday, the Lakers are at the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Rockets are at the Clippers 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2012, Black Lives Matter is born after the killing of an unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. In 2015, the European refugee crisis sees an unprecedented number of asylum seekers entering the EU after fleeing conflict regions like Syria. And in 2017, the Me Too movement inspires a new wave of social justice.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Roger Hearing with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. And European stocks have been edging higher on Wednesday after what was a very lackluster session in Asia. At the moment, stocks 600 up 1/10 of 1%, FTSE 100 up 1/10 of 1%, the CAC up 1/10 of 1% too. The DAX a bit of an outlier, that's down 1/10 of 1% at the moment, and the IBEX up almost 3/10 of 1%. The index was really trading higher as most national benchmarks in the region are in the green because of luxury TV and because of various stocks. Luxury TV and stereo maker Bang & Olufsen, they had a bad day, plunging after issuing their 4th profit warning in a year. A big drop in their mark, but currently looking across into the commodities space, WTI oil staying above $60 per barrel. Concerns there about what's going on in terms of U.S. inventories. Industry report showing a large build in U.S. crude and gasoline stockpiles, and that's reviving demand concerns. So currently 60.47 is WTI, 66.73 Brent crude. And going into the currency area, at the moment, cable keeping an eye on that, of course, in the light of the announcement by Boris Johnson that he's seeking to end any negotiations with Europe by the end of 2020. Currently it's 1.3121. It's certainly not making up any of the losses that it lasted in the last 24 to 48 hours. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Sandra Kilhoff with more on what's going on around the world. Sandra.
Good morning, Roger. Hundreds of thousands of French protesters have again taken to the streets over President Macron's pension reform. Union leaders like Philippe Martinez from the General Confederation of Labour are due to meet with the government later today.
This is not an ultimatum. They should open their eyes and unplug their ears. The mobilization is high in the public and private sectors.
Former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair will today call for a total change of the Labour Party following last week's catastrophic election defeat. Blair will today say that the party cannot simply carry on with Corbyn's policies under a new leader. It comes after Labour MPs yesterday heavily criticised leader Jeremy Corbyn at a private meeting. And billionaire hedge fund manager Michael Platt has described a viral interview with a cabbie as a spoof. In the video, the Bluecrest Capital Management co-founder said he's the highest earning person in the world of finance. But that is up for debate. According to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, Platt ranks 5th with a net value of $4 billion. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Oh, be careful what you say to your cabbie. I have to say, I'm not in danger of this because I literally get in the cab at 3:20. I ask them to turn the radio off. I tell them to go straight on at the lights, and then I say I can't talk because I need to read the Bloomberg.
I bet they love you. I bet they love you. No, just be very careful what you say. But classic old journalistic thing is when you're going to somewhere far away, you get all your views from the cabbie on the way to the wherever it is, your hotel.
Yeah. Oh, is that what you do, Roger?
Oh, yeah.
Just say what
Almost
your cabbie
entirely.
thinks on air
Almost
every day.
entirely, yeah.
Well, this morning I got bombarded by my Uber driver about his views on the Hungarian president, so that was quite fun.
Guys, you've got to shut it down. I just say, sorry, I can't talk, I need to work.
Well,
I'd
20
love
minutes
to, but
later I arrived here, so thank God.
Anyway, with us in the London studio, ready to talk, Craig Earlham, Senior Market Analyst at Oanda. Craig, great to have you with us. Do you like chatting to your cabbie in the mornings?
I am a bit chatty, although I do use the mornings to prepare generally for the interview.
So you get your information from the cabbie as well?
No, it's valuable time when you're in the car reading. Anyway,
I think I'm just generally quite a chatty person anyway, so I'll engage with anyone who wants a bit of a chin wag.
Including us. So let's get to the markets then, Craig. And what we sort of started the show on was various calls for the 10-year yield by the end of 2020. I mean, you've got SocGen and Citi that are pretty bullish, respectively. They see a 120 and 125 handle on the 10-year Treasury yield end 2020. Goldman sees 225, and Jeff Gundlach also slightly bearish, seeing a 215 handle, and he points to the copper gold ratio and what a good indicator that is for 10-year yields. We've got the phase one deal out of the way. What does that mean for the outlook in 2020 in terms of risk and therefore the 10-year yield versus, say, equities?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I hate to say this, but I feel like next year is going to be a lot more boring compared to what we've become accustomed to. And I think it almost suits everyone for that to be the case. Central banks have done their part. They've been far more active this year than I think they would have liked to. I think they just wanted a gradual easing, tightening cycle, and that's what they had in mind at the start, and it didn't quite go according to plan. We've got the US presidential election next year, so I think Trump will like to keep things nice and steady as she goes, so I don't think he'll want anything too crazy. And I think investors we've gone through quite a tumultuous period. I mean, let's face it, granted, here in the UK we're not going to be quite so fortunate to have a more relaxing year, but I think from a US perspective, a global perspective, I think if we get to end of 2020 almost as we are, I think everyone will look back and go, do you know what, that is a success. We've gone through a decade of growth. We've had some unexpected ups and downs. A year of steadiness almost would be celebrated, and we can say now we can actually, the calm is, we've had that kind of calming. The periods of instability we've had at times this year have really unsettled.
Yeah, the thing is, will we actually get that? Because you say that we have had a tumultuous year, which we have, but right now, vol is pretty suppressed across asset classes. So that could rear its head surely in 2020, and we still don't know. So little has been agreed in the phase one deal, and in terms of the Fed, a lot of people are coming out with these bullish Treasury calls because they do expect more Fed cuts, or maybe that would simply just support the market.
Yeah, I think the Fed will move if they have to, and I know we talk about vol, but I feel like we've been talking about vol for the last 6-7 years. It's like it's been so low for so long, it has to burst at some point. We have had occasions where it has burst higher, but it tends to settle quite quickly. So I feel like we can sometimes become obsessed with something that's not happening and assume it has to happen. It doesn't have to happen now. It will happen at some point. It doesn't have to happen now. It could be 2022. It could be 2023. It's like everyone's been calling the end of the bull run since 2015 because they've said it's gone on just about long enough. So I'm calling a high. And for anyone who called it 2015, 2016, 2017, each and every time they were wrong, and eventually someone's going to get it right, and yeah, we'll give them a pat on the back. But I don't think we always have to be so obsessed with it's been too long.
But also because the factors that are maybe going to influence it are outside the realm of what the economists often have to deal with, because there's a lot of politics out there. We've got the 2020 election. We've also got the question marks there with whether Boris Johnson can or even wants to necessarily deliver everything by the end of 2020 in terms of a deal with the EU. So there's a lot of variables there that could make a huge difference. And I mean, the market has shown itself to be easily scared. There's a lot that could scare it.
Yeah, exactly. And let's face it, the things that typically do scare it aren't things that we're aware of. It's never something as big as the election or like Brexit. Of course, the referendum night was an unexpected result, which is why things went a bit haywire. But the things that do seem to send the markets into a bit of a shiver do tend to be something that's a little bit unexpected. We obviously had a couple of months ago the issue in the debt markets where everything spiraled and interest rates soared above 10%, I think it was at the time, and that came out of nowhere. Very few people were actually calling that, and that's why we see these big spikes in involved. It's easy to say, right, what are the big events next year? But the reason they're big is because people are prepared for them, and if people are prepared, then we don't tend to see the same types of reactions.
Yeah, okay, so let me try and get some specific calls out of you then. Let's start with cable, because we've actually given up a lot of the pre-election gains, and some are now seeing a reasonably clear path to 120. We're around about 130 now. Is that where you see cable ending the year, or do we maintain the levels that we're at now or even go higher?
See, I think what we've got to remember is, I mean, there obviously is two massive factors involved in this. There is Brexit, there is the no-deal risks that come with the end of December, and then there's also the Boris risk, and we've talked about Trump risk for many years, but the Boris risk is right up there. Boris doesn't necessarily mean everything he says. When he wants to enshrine something in law by the end of 2020, does that mean if we get to November 2020 and there's no deal, that he won't enshrine a new law that enables him to move it? He's still got that massive majority in Parliament. That's not going anywhere in 2020. So anything that's done can be undone over the course of the year if it's not going to plan. So yes, there is always going to be that downside pressure on cable as a result of the risks of this no-deal Brexit. But for no-deal Brexit to happen, a massive majority Conservative government has to allow it to happen. And if that's going to happen, that's going to be extremely punishing come the next election. And I don't think he's going to want to throw away all the gains that we've had now. So what were we now? Around 131 this morning. So yeah, I mean, I think the end of next year, I think 135, even maybe a little bit pushing on to 140 isn't outrageous, because by the end of next year we'll either have a deal or we'll have an extension. So those fears are put to rest. These ideas that we could be seeing a massive bearish result because we're heading for no deal, don't get me wrong, we've all been wrong in the past, and with Brexit we've all been wrong multiple times, but I just don't see this irresponsibility from Boris.
And what about your call in terms of where the yield will be on the 10-year treasuries, because there's a lot of focus on that this morning. Where do you call it for, say, the end of 2020?
Yeah, like I say, I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me if we're pretty much as we are now.
No change.
I think we could see a few ups and downs along the way, but I do think central banks, there may be some tweaks, and obviously the risks are probably slightly to the downside. But if this phase one trade deal is as it seems, and we haven't got details yet, so it's hard to say. But I just my view is just simply that from a political standpoint, Donald Trump has caused a lot of the fluctuations in many ways because of his policy with regards to trade, etc. He is going to want a quieter year. He doesn't want to go into an election campaign where he's fighting trade wars, because while it seems to reflect well in now, it reflects well because he's got the deal. If he'd have got to the end of this situation without a deal, that's a very different situation for him. So yeah, I mean, with regards to 10-year treasuries, I really wouldn't be surprised if we end the next year pretty much where we are at this moment in time.
I mean, Jeff Gundlach would disagree, seeing 215. He's fixated on the copper-gold ratio, and of course copper's done well recently just because of the optimism around phase one. Is that something that reverses for you in 2020, where we see industrial metals retreat on concerns around global growth and gold catches a bit again?
I'm not necessarily sure about retreat, because at the end of the day, there are probably going to be pockets, and China's probably one of them, where we are going to see growth remain under a little pressure, and that's obviously a massive copper market. But then we do also, if this trade deal, like say, is as it seems, then that could provide a lot of relief, and that could support growth in the near term. So yeah, I don't necessarily see it retreating too heavily. I think Europe isn't going to boom next year, but it's not going to be as bad as it could be.
Craig, thanks very much. Craig Earlham, their senior market analyst at Oanda, joining us here in our London studio. And coming up in the next hour, it's Anna Edwards and Matt Miller taking over and talking to Stephen Macklow-Smith of JP Morgan Asset Management. This is Bloomberg.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Batteries running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What we're now seeing for the first time is this facade of absolute unity beginning to break down in the EU.
We expect that there will be some type of slowdown recession beyond 2019.
The European banking system, although recovering, hasn't recovered, and there are areas of fragility.
We've seen this before, trade talks that lead nowhere, and then tariffs. We just swing from one to the other, and markets get caught in the middle.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe with Anna Edwards and Matt Miller on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning from London. I'm Anna Edwards.
And from the German capital of Berlin, I'm Matt Miller. You're listening to Daybreak Europe on London DAB Digital Radio.
Yes, you are. And we get some German data, don't we, this hour? Some IFO numbers, Matt. The IFO December German Business Confidence Index at 96.3. The estimate was 95.5. So just a touch ahead of the estimate. Is that having any impact on what we're seeing on the euro? We trade at 1.1132, so down around 0.1%, and not making all that much movement as a result of that number coming through, specifically on the German economy, of course, and businesses and their confidence level at this point of the cycle. Let's get an update on what's going on the broader markets then. A quick data check for you. So the Stock 600 up an eighth of a percent. The FTSE 100 up around 0.2%. The CAC 40 and the Xetra DAX both fairly flat, either side of the flat line. US futures flat to positive. And actually, as we've gone through the session, we've turned what was a modest loss into a modest gain for European equity markets. So an hour into trading, that's where we are in terms of sentiment. The oil price retreats a little bit, down 0.8% at 60.46 on WTI, 65.73 on Brent. We see a little bit of appetite for bonds, so we now will find ourselves in a situation where we've got buying of equities and buying of bonds, but both just by a fraction. So the yield on the 10-year comes down. It's at 1.86 right now, the yield on the US 10-year, that is, and the dollar index stronger by 0.1%. A little bit of upside there as we continue to see the pound losing a little bit of ground, down 0.3%. We've got a little bit of M&A to talk about, a bit of asset sale, news flow as well coming through from corporates, media stocks doing well on the back of that, news flow from Pearson on an asset sale, and we've got M&A within the car sector to talk about, but we don't have any big headlines around trade. Still waiting for more details on phase one, perhaps, Matt.
Yeah, would be great to get more details. I'm sure the market is waiting, and it's already rallied quite a bit. So this could be, as some people say, the pause that refreshes, a little bit of consolidation here. Let's bring in Dan Kemp right now from Morningstar Investment Management. He is the CIO for EMEA. They have, I believe, $217 billion in assets under management. Dan, what do you think about the way markets have reacted to the phase one trade deal and what's priced in and what's not?
Matt, good morning. I think it seems to us that there's a lot of optimism associated with what is still quite a sketchy trade deal. And so I think investors are going to want to see a lot more detail come through that. We know this trade war has been building and building for a long period of time. Investors are clearly looking for some sort of Christmas gift in terms of good news on that trade front, but we haven't seen a lot yet. And so I think for us as investors, obviously we're long-term and valuation-driven, but even for shorter-term investors, I think people need to be careful about baking too much expectation into that trade deal at this point.
Why is that then? Why do you think so? Why do you think, Dan, that we need to be careful? Is it because you don't think the details will be forthcoming, or is that the phase two is a bit too far down the road, or actually are you trading around other things, largesse from central banks rather than the trade news flow?
And I think that's a really good point. There's a challenge for all investors in that we tend to extrapolate either good or bad news. And so when we get a sniff of good news that changed the narrative, as this trade deal seems to have done, then there's a real temptation to build in a lot of price movement into that. But in reality, as you say, the details are still fairly sketchy. We want to see something more substantive before we can really have any confidence that it's going going to have an impact on the long-term fair value, which, of course, as investors, we're focused on. But you're also right that there are lots of other real things going on in asset markets at the moment that investors can focus on instead, whether that's valuation differentials or fundamental changes in companies.
So I know that you don't like U.S. stocks better than every other region, and that's a position that we've had a lot of people defending this year. Why do you think the prices have got ahead of themselves in the U.S.?
Matt, that's absolutely right. We'd love that to be a contrarian position, but it really isn't. It seems to be very consensus at the moment that a lot of people are concerned about valuations in the US. It's tough not to be concerned given how close they are to the top end of their long-term range. But it's also worth saying that when you dig a little bit deeper into that market, then it's quite bifurcated. There are some sectors that still look quite attractive, not absolutely attractive, but relatively attractive. But there are, of course, those outlying technology consumer discretionary stocks where we see so much good news baked in that it's tough to see how an investor can make long-term returns from buying those assets at these prices.
Dan, can I ask you about one of the areas in Europe that you like? That's the European energy space, I think. You like stocks in that sector. Do you think, how do you view ESG risk around European energy companies? This week we've seen the European Union drawing up new language, or starting the process of drawing up new language on what really is green and what isn't in terms of investment. We just had a conversation on Bloomberg TV with someone from AXA talking about investment in transition bonds, which are ways to finance the transition from sort of polluting activities to greener activities for corporates. So how do you view ESG risk when you look at a European energy business?
Well, I think that is one of the key risks, and again, it reflects the importance of being long-term in your investment approach rather than focusing on the next few days or the next few months. That sustainability risk, not just in energy but in lots of other sectors, will be a key risk going forward, and something that we need to be aware of. Having said that, we know that a lot of the European energy companies are really focused on this risk at the moment and are divesting assets, making changes, and so it feels like a risk that is being managed by some of those companies rather than something that's being ignored. When we're thinking about long-term risks, the ones that are most dangerous for investors are the ones that are ignored rather than the ones that are being addressed and managed. So that's not to say there's not risk, there certainly is, but it's great to see some of those companies address those risks.
What do you think about car makers? I mean, in general, are they going to bounce back? They've had, frankly, a lot of car makers have had a great year from an equity standpoint, but the concern, of course, is a fall in sales. The biggest markets are slowing down. They're going through a transition. How do you see the industry?
Matt, that's right. They've sort of been in the eye of the storm, particularly in Germany over the last year or so, where people have expressed their concerns about a trade war, partly through autos, and also that impact of a trade war on a slowing global economy. And so if we do see some genuinely good news coming out of the trade negotiations, then I think it would be likely to expect some sort of short-term movement. But again, it's important for investors to look through that and think about the longer-term challenges to auto stocks and try and weigh up the valuation in that context. We know that there are long-term structural challenges for autos as well as the shorter-term headwinds of trade. So while the shorter-term headwinds may abate, we may again see a positive impact on the global economy. Investors have to be focused on those longer-term headwinds, and again, from an ESG perspective, thinking about the risks that are baked into the larger auto manufacturers and their supply chains, which may not be as present in other industries.
Thanks very much, Dan, for joining us. Dan Kemp, Morningstar Investment Management CIO for EMEA, with his thoughts on strategy into 2020.
All right, let's get over now to Sandra Kilhoff with your global news headlines. Sandra?
Good morning, Matt. U.S. President Trump is condemning Democrats in a blistering 6-page letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro says it comes ahead of today's impeachment vote in the House.
More due process was afforded to those accused Salem witch trial, says the president, adding in his missive to Speaker Pelosi, no intelligent person believes what you're saying. The president says he looks forward to a Senate trial, which may be brief. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shot down Democrats' proposal to call more witnesses to testify. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Australia has endured its hottest day on record, with temperatures soaring to 40.9 degrees Celsius yesterday. There are still more than 100 bushfires in New South Wales, and Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons says it's only going to get worse.
Firefighters, emergency services and all those communities are going to be challenged with a new threat as we hit these heat wave conditions that are going to dominate much of the state.
French President Macron and labour unions remain in deadlock over his proposed pension reform. Bloomberg's James Regan says hundreds of thousands of demonstrators once again took to the streets.
The government hopes to meet with union leaders in an effort to reopen dialogue over Macron's proposals to introduce a universal points-based pension system and raise the retirement age. Questions remain over whether strikes that have hit transportation will continue over the Christmas period. In Paris, James Regan, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Israel's economy is now beginning to suffer as the country heads for its third election in a year. Bloomberg's Ivan Livingston reports.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party is preparing for a bitter leadership primary later this month, ahead of another general election in March. And a period of paralysis is pushing off crucial investments and reforms, while the national debt load rose last year for the first time in nearly a decade. In Tel Aviv, Ivan Livingston, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Anna.
Thanks very much, Sandra. Now with your morning sports news, here's Colin Besley.
Aston Villa are the first team through to the semi-finals of the League Cup. A much-changed side thrashed a youthful Liverpool 5-0 at Villa Park. There's a potential for some huge upsets this evening. League One Oxford host holders Manchester City, while fourth-tier Colchester take on Manchester United at Old Trafford. Duncan Ferguson remains in caretaker charge of Everton for their last-day clash with Leicester at Goodison Park. Meanwhile, Liverpool begin their bid to lift the Club World Cup this evening. The European champions take on Monterrey in the semi-finals in Qatar. Bristol Rovers will be at home to Coventry in the third round of the FA Cup. They'll contest the All-League One tie next month after a 1-0 win at fourth-tier Plymouth in their replay. Celtic can extend their lead at the top of the Scottish Premiership to 5 points with a win at Strugglers Hearts tonight. The home side are only off the bottom of the table on goal difference. And it was an historic night at the World Darts Championship. Fallon Sherrock's 3-2 victory over Ted Evans in an all-English first-round tie was the first time a woman has beaten a man at the event.
Let's get the U.S. sports report now. For that, we go to Pete Fox. Pete?
Hockey on the island at the Nassau Coliseum was looking good early for the Islanders as they were up 3-1 on the Predators. From there, Nashville started scoring at will, and the Islanders couldn't stop them at all. 7 unanswered for the Preds as they cruised to victory 8-3. And at TD Garden, the Bruins had a lead on the Kings. Late into the third, they could not maintain as the Kings tied it, sending it to overtime where Andrei Kopitar would net the game winner. From the night on the hardwood at Madison Square Garden, the Knicks have won 3 of their last 4. A 23-point walk over the Hawks, 143-120. And in New Orleans, an overtime win for the Nets, 108-101, capped by Spencer Dinwiddie's 31. I'm Pete Fox. That's your Bloomberg NBC Sports Update.
Pete, thanks very much for that. Now, here's what you should be watching today. At noon, Chancellor Angela Merkel will take questions on behalf of the government from Bundestag members for an hour. We're going to be listening for any thoughts on Huawei. That's noon. I'm guessing that's noon London time, which, of course, will be 1 p.m. here in Berlin, where she's speaking. Later in the U.S., the full House of Representatives is planning to vote on President Donald Trump's impeachment that's likely to go through strictly along party lines, and then a Senate trial will begin in January. Still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, Clemens Fist, president of the IFO Institute, tells us why he thinks German business confidence has gone up in December. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
In the world of financial advice, speed, clarity, and foresight aren't just nice to have, they're required to survive. Adipar provides advisors the real-time portfolio reporting and insights required to realize the goals and personal potential for their clients. Trusted by thousands of wealth advisors, from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions, Adipar helps you make better, more informed investment decisions. To learn more, visit us at addepar.com.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs on Bloomberg Technology.
Apple Wallet, Uber Money, Google checking accounts. It seems like everywhere you look, big tech is getting into the financial services game. So what's that trend doing to fintech? Enrique Dubagras is here to answer. He is the CEO of Brex. The company minted itself a unicorn this past summer with a valuation of $2.6 billion. Enrique, welcome to the program. And I wonder, as you sort of take a look forward, given how big competition is, how competitive this space is, where do you see the next sectors in terms of the biggest opportunities?
So I believe that there's a clear distinction between distribution and actual innovation in financial services. I think a lot of the big tech companies, what they're doing is just creating new distribution channels for existing products. So, for example, Amazon's credit card is issued by JP Morgan and American Express. And, I truly believe that if there's no technology development in the back end, it won't change much. I think a lot of the opportunity are for both fintech firms and non-fintech firms that actually rebuild the technology behind it and don't use the technologies built by the bank.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Back.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So we're only up 0.1% on the US Stock 600 this morning. We're taking a pause in the big rally that we've seen. We've gained 23% on European equities, of course. So this is the biggest rally for European stocks since the financial crisis. But actually, the volumes really aren't there. The cash value traded on the US Stock 600 is actually down about 13% compared to last year. Having said that, we've had some big deals out this morning. PSA Group and Fiat Chrysler climbing after agreeing on a merger. So Peugeot up 1.3% at the moment. Fiat Chrysler gaining 1.5%. Also, the German IFO data shows business confidence ticking up in December in Germany. So that's obviously something we've been watching closely. As for the rest of the markets, linked to the US market open, we are now positive for Dow Jones and S&P 500 futures after we had a pretty mixed session actually over in Asia. Investors really want to know more about the US-China trade deal. It was announced on Friday, but we don't have it inked or anything else. In terms of the fixed income markets, a check there as we get a lot of Fed speakers today. 1.87% down just by a basis point. Germany yields at negative 28 basis points. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Sandra Kilhop with more what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Anger continues across India as the government defends a controversial law that bars undocumented Muslims from seeking citizenship while allowing migrants from other religions to do so. But Home Minister Amit Shah has told business business leaders that there's no chance it will be repealed. That's despite police clashing with students in New Delhi and protests also flaring in the financial hub Mumbai and far eastern state of Assam. South Sudan is closer to implementing a peace deal this week, but is not likely to halt rural clashes over land and water that have killed more than 100 people in the past month. In response, the UN has sent troops into the central and northwestern parts of the country. And former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair will today call for a total change of the Labour Party following last week's catastrophic election defeat. Blair will today say that the party cannot simply carry on with Corbyn's policies under a new leader. It comes after Labour MPs yesterday heavily criticised leader Jeremy Corbyn at a private meeting. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Sandra, thanks very much for that. Now, we are going to talk about Germany's business outlook. It's improved for the third month in a row, according to the IFO Institute. It measures executives' expectations, which rose to a level of 93.8 in December from a level of 92.3 in November. Business confidence also beat expectations, according to the IFO index. This is manufacturers start to see a way out of a year-long downturn that's left Europe's economy deeply scarred. For more, we're joined by the IFO Institute President, Clemens Fist. Clemens, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Let me ask what you put the improvement down to.
Good morning. Yes, there is an improvement, but this is really about expectations. The current assessment of the business situation in manufacturing even worsened a little, so it's still bad, but for the next 6 months, companies expect improvements. The US-China trade deal certainly plays a role here. The expectation that there will not be a hard Brexit, at least not at the end of January. There is still uncertainty regarding the end of 2020, obviously, but I think these are two key factors that have improved the situation.
Yes, I was going to ask you, which is most significant, do you think, in terms of expectations for business executives in Germany? Clemens, the news around Brexit, or the path forward seeming clearer, at least in the short term on Brexit, or the expectation that we don't see a deepening in trade tensions between the US and China, which matters more?
It's hard to pin it down, but I would say it's mostly the latter. There were really concerns that this trade war would escalate, and there have been signs of easing tensions for Brexit. The most answers came in before the elections in the UK. Of course, even before it, there was growing confidence that there wouldn't be a hard Brexit in the short term, but the most answers came in before the election. So I would say it's mostly the US-China trade deal, maybe also encouraging news about the U.S. economy coming in, but with the Fed saying they do not expect further interest rate cuts, I think that was also a positive signal.
In terms of the German economy, obviously the auto industry is huge, and then you've got other industrial sectors, defense, and so on and so forth. What is the problem with the auto industry? Is it uncertainty over trade that's leading people not to buy cars? Is it the shift from internal combustion engines to electric engines? What's going on there?
I think it is this overall toxic mix of Dieselgate, the transition to electric cars, and the general slowdown in the world economy that has reduced demand for cars. The car industry really does face a lot of uncertainty. We shouldn't forget that European regulations also force the car industry to move away from the combustion engine, and that really raises a lot of questions. So I really think it's a combination of these factors.
We are going to speak a little bit later on to a guest from JP Morgan Asset Management. They've done some research that suggests that the impact of monetary policy on today's global economy has been at best low and at worst negative. What would you expect the ECB to be doing under new leadership of Christine Lagarde to support the German economy at this point?
I really think there isn't much they can do to support the economy either in Germany or in the Eurozone. What Christine Lagarde has done recently was basically to say to policymakers, you need to do something that's related to structural policies, maybe also to fiscal policy. I think if policy wants to do something, it really has to come from fiscal and structural policies. In Germany, we have a moderate fiscal expansion, 0.5% of GDP this year, another 0.5% of GDP next year, and that is keeping the German economy above water. I don't think the ECB can do much. They are discussing now supporting the so-called New Green Deal, but that's still very vague. I think it's very hard at the zero lower bound to do much in terms of monetary policy at this point.
Yeah, I think the market agrees with you. Clemens, thanks so much for joining us. Clemens Fist there, president of the IFO Institute. He'll be joining us on television as well. So if you want to follow him there, just type TV Go. Up next, we're going to talk about the impeachment and the state of President Trump's administration. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. David Tepper is bringing a Major League Soccer team to Charlotte. Charlotte was awarded an MLS expansion team by Commissioner Don Garber. The team will begin play in 2021 and can begin signing players immediately. Tepper owns the NFL's Carolina Panthers, and the team will play its games at Bank of America Stadium, where the Panthers play. Helmet maker Vices has won more than $1 million in grants from the NFL, but now the company, which makes high-tech helmets for quarterbacks such as Seattle's Russell Wilson and Kansas City's Patrick Mahomes, is losing money. In a letter reviewed by the New York Times, the new chief executive of Vices, Ralph Green Jr., wrote, "Our employees are currently furloughed, and we need to raise capital in order to continue operating." The company had raised more than $90 million from venture capital and high-profile NFL players. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Investors who put their money on the line to help build U.S. infrastructure deserve to be protected. That's what we do at BAM. Our unconditional guarantee means investors receive every payment of interest and principal when due, period. BAM-insured bonds have a high AA stable rating from S&P, and BAM credit profiles provide complete transparency on each and every transaction. BAM-insured bonds help build America's essential public projects. BAM, the feeling is mutual.
Why? Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6s with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition. For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked bread to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Hey, NFL fan. Can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie.
With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
It was 1970, and a pregnant Air Force captain found herself in a bind.
If you're pregnant, you cannot be active duty. If you have a child, you cannot be active duty.
So she sued. This week on The Media examines the case that almost set the course for women's reproductive rights. Instead, to Justice Ginsburg's dismay, we got Roe v. Wade. On this week's On The Media from WNYC. Listen to the On The Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Ho, ho, ho! Make my job easier this year with a subscription to TuneIn Premium, featuring the world's largest selection of music, news, podcasts, and sports. It's a gift they'll enjoy every day, all year long. Ho, ho, ho! Happy holidays! Search Premium to upgrade today.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Anna Edwards. It is 10:30 in Berlin. It is 9:30 where I am here in London. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. And Matt, I know you're going to take us through the data in a moment, but just to go to some breaking news, we have UK November inflation. The rate stays at 1.5%. It was forecast to drop just a touch to 1.4%. Of course, the big moves in sterling, usually the big swing factor behind where we are on inflation, as we saw sterling drop post-2016 or mid-2016. That sent inflation higher. And we've been adjusting in and around those themes ever since. UK inflation holds at a 3-year low as the Bank of England's decision looms, of course. So write our colleagues who've been poring over the details of this data. The figures nonetheless likely to reinforce the dovish tilt at the Bank of England, according to Dave Goodman, one of our colleagues who's been poring over, as I say, the details of this inflation number, Matt.
All right, and I will give you the rest of the data as we do every 15 minutes. Just looking at risk indicators here, you would think today is a day that investors are selling stocks. We have U.S. 10-year yields falling 1.8697 is the yield as investors buy the debt. You've got the yen strengthening against the dollar at 109.4575 right now. And you've got gold climbing as well at 1478.78 a troy ounce. However, we do see a little bit of a turnaround in stocks. So while they were down across the board this morning, we are seeing European equity indexes, with the exception of the DAX, rise. The FTSE and the CAC each up about 0.2%. The Frankfurt DAX index is down, but only very fractionally right now, about 5 points at 13,282. In terms of the Stock 600, the broader European benchmark, it is now rising. And remember, we hit on Monday an all-time intraday high, just over 418 on the Stock 600. We then fell yesterday down to 414 and change, but we're now climbing back up to 416. So we're making a little bit of headway there, back up to another all-time record. In terms of the U.S. trade, just a quick look at futures. We now see green arrows across the board, about 0.1% for Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ mini futures.
Okay, let's talk about what's going on in the politics over in the United States then, Matt, because it's a busy week. President Trump today faces an impeachment vote in the U.S. House. If it goes through as expected, he will be only the third president to be impeached. Ahead of the vote, President Trump has condemned Democrats in a blistering 6-page letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, saying, for instance, that the Salem witch trials were fairer. For more on what we can expect today, let's bring into the conversation Bloomberg's U.S. politics editor, Kathleen Hunter, who's with us here in London. Kathleen, Good morning. So are we expecting this to go through the House and then not the Senate in the new year? Is that the way that this is going to play out?
And that's essentially what we're expecting. I think, it's likely that we'll get to the end of January and Trump will have been, if not acquitted, at least not convicted by the Republican-controlled Senate. I don't think anyone really foresees this ending any other way, given that the Senate's controlled by Republicans and that it would take a supermajority to convict the president. So I think the real question here is what's the political fallout then? If Trump is essentially cleared of any wrongdoing by the Senate, what are the political ramifications for both Democrats and Republicans heading into 2020?
You could say it the same way about the House, right? I mean, the Democrats are in control of the House, and barring one or two exceptions, this vote is going to impeach the president, is expected at least to go directly along party lines, isn't it, Kathleen?
Absolutely, and I think that's exactly the most key cohort really to be watching in the House today is the 31 Democrats that are representing districts that Trump won in 2016. And so I think watching them is going to be very key. And as you said, we don't really expect a lot of defections. There are two that have said that they're not going to vote for this. One of them has even changed parties to become an independent as a result of this. But otherwise, it looks like the defections are going to be pretty slim. At least Democrats are going to comfortably have the votes that they need to get this through the House. And then I think the question is, what are the ramifications for those Democrats that are sitting in Trump districts when they seek to re-election in November as well? And does that put Nancy Pelosi's speakership and her majority at risk?
Okay, so those are the Democrats we're watching. What about the letter that we saw President Trump write? I mean, obviously it was in his own style, as everything is from this particular president, unlike others. So what were the main takeaways from the actual content of the letter, the defenses that he put up?
Well, I think it's important to look at what he laid out there in terms of, kind of the rhetorical flourishes aside. I think it's important to look at kind of the substantive arguments that he made. And I think he, in laying out his reasoning for why he considers this to be an illegitimate impeachment proceeding in the House, I think, is tipping his hand and giving us all a preview into what his attorney's argument is going to be when this reaches the Senate and they're allowed to present their defense, and essentially saying that there's no constitutional basis for this and that it goes far beyond the scope of what Congress should be doing in terms of an impeachment. I think are going to be kind of the arguments that underlie his defense in the Senate.
By the way, what's the deal with President Trump writing a 6-page letter? That doesn't sound like our commander-in-chief. Isn't it normally 140 characters? Why has he suddenly become so formal?
So verbose.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did have a similar reaction when I saw it. And, obviously the president has staff as well. And I wouldn't want to suggest, because I have no knowledge of this, that he didn't personally write this letter. But, I think that it certainly had elements of it that read very much like his Twitter feed. And then there were other elements, I think, that were more, maybe studied and I don't want to say substantive, but, more legally based. And I think that perhaps it was a combination.
I thought his command of the English language, I heard some excerpts sounded incredible. His vocabulary.
He's command of 15th century Whitehall procedure as well, talking about the types of trials that used to happen not so far away from where I sit.
and of course in Salem, right? By the Kathleen, there's a reason he said that the Salem witch trials were more fair. Didn't he say that he wasn't granted legal representation or the ability to call witnesses?
Yeah, and I think that, just invoking that particular point in history, he's always characterized both this and Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe as, political witch hunts. And so I think that's a natural extension rhetorically of that.
Yeah, and he was talking about star chambers, which originated not far from here. Thanks very much to Bloomberg's US political editor, Kathleen Hunter, joining us here in the London studio.
All right, let's get over to Sandra Kilhoff now for your global news headlines. Sandra?
Good morning, Matt. Australia has had its hottest day on record, with temperatures surging to 40.9 degrees Celsius yesterday. It comes as more than 100 wildfires continue to burn in New South Wales. State Premier Gladys Berejiklian warns that the next few days will be very difficult.
Given not only the number of fires that are burning across the state, but also the heat wave conditions that will be evident Thursday and even under worse circumstances on Saturday.
Hundreds of thousands of French protesters have again taken to the streets over President Macron's pension reform. Union leaders like Philippe Martinez from the General Confederation of Labour are due to meet with the government later today.
C'est pas un ultimatum.
This is not an ultimatum. They should open their eyes and unplug their ears. The mobilization is high in the public and private sectors.
1 year ago, Russian President Vladimir Putin promised a pickup in economic growth, but as Bloomberg's Natasha Doff explains, that didn't happen.
The growth rate of 1.8% he forecast for 2019 isn't likely even to exceed 1.3%. The government is hoping that higher spending will boost economic performance next year. But Putin's goal of 3% remains well out of reach. In Moscow, Natasha Doff, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Macau to celebrate 20 years of Chinese rule. Bloomberg's Ian Marlowe says Beijing is sending increasingly stern messages to neighboring territory Hong Kong.
Xi is expected to use his visit to send a message to the protest-stricken financial hub of Hong Kong, some 50 kilometers to the east. Stop protesting, work with us, and get rich. During a similar anniversary visit to Hong Kong 2 years ago, Xi urged the city to profit from China, not defy it. In Hong Kong, Ian Marlowe, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Matt Miller.
Sandra Kilhoff, thank you very much. Let's get the U.S. Sports Report now from Pete Fox. Pete?
From the NBA, the Knicks have won 3 of their last 4 after rolling the Hawks at MSG 143-120. The Nets needed overtime to get past the Pelicans at Smoothie King in New Orleans 108-101. Spencer Dinwiddie posting 31 in the win. On the ice on the island at the Coliseum, a head-scratcher for the Islanders, who led the Predators, who were on a back-to-back, by the way, 3-1 midway through the second. From there, Nashville scored 7 unanswered to win it 8-3. And in Boston at TD Garden, the Bruins let one slip through their fingers, up 3-2 on the Kings in the final minutes. LA would tie it, sending it to overtime, where Andrzej Kopitar would net the game winner, 4-3 the final. I'm Pete Fox. That's your Bloomberg NBC Sports Update.
Thanks very much for that, Pete. You're all caught up on your sports news stateside. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, is monetary stimulus failing? Is it working in the way it was intended? JP Morgan Asset Management has been looking into this subject and has some conclusions about what it is doing at best and at worst. We will bring you that shortly. We'll be speaking to the strategist Stephen Macklow-Smith in the next part of the programme. The European equity markets turning tail after earlier losses. We now see Stock 600 up by 0.2%. US futures point higher by 0.1%. This is Bloomberg.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
More than just a game, baseball is big business. For the Atlanta Braves, this meant bringing a $1 billion stadium project to life through a public-private partnership, creating the Battery, a mixed-use development that turned an underdeveloped area into a thriving community.
Always on the cutting edge of community development, Cohn-Resnick advises industry participants on tax credits, affordable housing, opportunity zones, and more, helping communities reach their full potential. Explore more at cohnresnick.com/MLB. Cohn-Resnick, Advisory Assurance Tax. Transform your game.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
What? You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
The extraordinary sale is now on at Bicester Village, with up to 60% off the recommended retail price at participating boutiques until the 24th of December. Enjoy luxury for less at Emma Bridgewater, The White Company, Molton Brown, The Creuset, and many more. With free parking, all-day festive dining, and restaurants open late, it's the perfect time to do your Christmas shopping. The extraordinary sale at Bicester Village.
From ESPN and the award-winning producers of The Sterling Affairs comes the latest season of 30 for 30 podcasts. 4 brand new stories of espionage.
He wanted this team to be the Barcelona of women's basketball.
Resilience.
I started to scream. I tried to get away.
Corruption.
It's the culture of win at all costs.
And rebirth.
How will we ever rebuild it?
30 for 30 Podcasts, Season 6. Listen in favorite 30 for 30 podcasts on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
Sean McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So global equities are hovering near record highs, but we're really struggling to find a catalyst. Investors perhaps want to know more on the US-China trade deal that is supposedly agreed, or was agreed on Friday, but we don't have the details. Shares here in Europe gained just 0.2% right now, so the strong rally that we've seen this year up 23% looks a little bit on pause. Although we did have big news out of PSA Group and Fiat Chrysler. Their share prices have both climbed after they agreed a merger. So Peugeot right now up by 1.4%, Fiat Chrysler by 1.5%. Unilever shares have rebounded after dropping as much as 5.4% in Amsterdam. That's the steepest intraday drop since 2017. The company issuing a warning over sales growth. As for futures, US futures, little change to slightly higher after the S&P 500 index closed within, just 1 index point off a new record high. Citigroup also upgrading its recommendation for American stocks to an overweight position. As for bonds this morning, we're up a basis point for both French and German yields. US benchmark yields dropped 1 basis point to 1.87%. And in the currency markets, it was the yuan that got our attention this morning. The offshore was trading at 7. We're now at 6.99 for that. The pound drops further, down 0.1% on cable. cable after the 1.7% drop that we saw on Tuesday. We trade at 1.3116 for cable as the new Prime Minister Boris Johnson, perhaps revives the idea of maybe a no-deal Brexit, or at least getting the Brexit deadline done by the end of this year. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Sandra Kilhoff with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. The US has little chance of stopping the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, according to Bloomberg sources. That's despite several years of trying to bring the project to a halt. Administration officials tell us that the pipeline is nearly complete and that sanctions passed this week will have no effect. De Beers diamond sales have slumped by almost $1.4 billion this year. It caps a torrid 12 months that saw total sales at the unit reach just $4 billion. It comes as an oversupply of rough diamonds, a surfeit of polished stones and falling prices pile pressure on the industry. And UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson won't attend next month's World Economic Forum in Davos. He's branding his administration the people's government. And we've learned from officials that they don't want to undermine that image by the sight of the Prime Minister with the global elite. Johnson hasn't always been against attending the summit, though. He went at least twice as Mayor of London. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
Sandra, thanks very much for that. Now, coming up next, our colleagues in the U.S. are getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's check in with Nathan Hager, who's standing by at 731 Lexington Avenue. Nathan, what's ahead?
Well, good morning, Matt. We're watching a parade of corporate stories this morning, including FedEx coming in with quarterly earnings that one analyst is calling breathtakingly bad. So we're going to be watching that company's shares in the pre-market. Along with PG&E, the California utility is surging overnight with a court signing off on its wildfire settlements. We also have developments on trade to pass along this morning, not just about China this time around, but on USMCA. We'll talk about what better trade certainty could mean for currency markets. Stephen Gallo, head of European FX at BMO, will join us. And, of course, we have our eyes on Washington, where the House of Representatives is all but certain to impeach President Trump tonight while he lashes out at the process. Join me and Karen Moscow for all that and more coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak. Matt.
I'm currently, my mind is being blown.
Yeah.
Nathan, my producer is telling me that you're actually in Washington, D.C.
I am indeed in Washington, D.C., getting ready for this historic day in the nation's
this is the, I guess, and in one sense, the beauty, but also the horror of radio. I've always thought you were based out of New York.
It's theater of the mind. The show is in New York, so it's been right all this time.
Well, we're all over global Wall Street. Nathan, thanks so much for joining us. Nathan Hager coming up next with Karen Moscow. You'll hear them if you're listening on Sirius XM, channel 119, anywhere in America or globally. If you're listening on London DAB, however, in the city, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Do you feel deceived, Matt? Yeah, that's tricky. People could tell us anything, couldn't they?
Yeah.
And we just believed them. We're very trusting types. Right, let's talk about what's going on in monetary policy globally as you recover from this shocking development. 2019 has seen global central banks continue to support global growth with accommodative policy. But JP Morgan Asset Management has concluded that the impact of monetary policy on today's global economy has been at best low and at worst negative. So what will central banks do armed with that analysis in 2020? Let's ask our guest involved in that research, Stephen Macklow-Smith, International Equity Group but Market Strategist at JP Morgan Asset Management. He joins us here in our London studio. Good morning to you, Stephen.
Morning, Anna.
So the assessment for global central banks is that they could have been doing damage with these, with negative interest rates specifically, or just low rates?
I think the reason we wrote the essay was that we wanted to think about the policy options that are open for central banks over the next 10 years, given that they themselves described both zero interest rates, as some central banks got to, and asset purchases as extraordinary monetary policy. And so we wanted to review the impact that those policies had had. And what we found was that although they had overall, clearly the impact was beneficial in the sense that we've had 10 years of growth, that growth has been fairly disappointing in amplitude. And we also found that if you think about the channels through which that growth was generated, that any kind of asset owner has been has been remunerated or has done reasonably well in the last 10 years, but you haven't seen broader wage growth in most economies. So the effect has been, mixed. So what we wanted to do is to say, well, in future, what are central banks going to be able to do given the insights that they've gained from looking at the impact that extraordinary monetary policy has had? And I'm relieved to say that both the Fed and the ECB are currently conducting reviews. So we will know more about what they think. But we were just kind of trying to frame our conclusion that over the next 10 to 15 years, inflation would be difficult to get to and keep at target, and accordingly that the interest rate structure would be lower in the future than it has been in the past.
We always get a lot of feedback when we talk about whether there is or isn't inflation. There's a whole big tin hat community that, rightly or wrongly so, thinks that we're dead wrong. And it brings to mind the complaints also about, because often they're intertwined, central bank policy. Have you found that central bank policy, that quantitative easing and all of these extraordinary measures have increased income inequality?
We have not addressed that question specifically. It depends also on what basis you try to measure inequality across economies. So clearly there is a constituency of commentators who believe that income inequality has increased. The evidence is kind of different across different sectors of the economy. Just to take your first point, now, the issue with inflation is clearly how you measure it. And there is, again, a point of view that because the weighting of housing within European inflation measures is lower than it is in the States. Actually, when you adjust for that, the US and European inflation measures look remarkably similar. A lot of that work has been well done by BCA rather than JP Morgan. But, it's an interesting point. However, the issue for us is that if you, as a central bank, have an inflation target, irrespective of how it's measured, that's the target that you're going to try and hit. So you could claim that European inflation has been higher than US inflation, but the impact on policy is that, the European Central Bank is trying to raise the inflation measure that they target towards the target that they have. Can I just say one last thing, which is, I think, really interesting? There's been a lot of negative comment about the role that the ECB has played. But if you said tin hat, but I geekishly went and measured what the average rate of inflation has been in the Eurozone since the launch of the euro in 1997. And using Bloomberg and moving averages, I came up with a figure of 1.7% for that whole period. So the ECB's target is close to but not exceeding 2%. And on that measure, you could say the ECB's done a reasonable job. The dynamics in the next 10 years may be slightly different, and I think that's why they're launching this review.
And of course, and the inflation rate, I suppose, felt differently in different parts of the economy, isn't it? But
yes.
but they have a mandate for the whole Eurozone. Stephen, let me ask you about the UK, just briefly, with the time that remains perhaps. Traders, it seems, ramping up bets that the Bank of England is going to lower interest rates at the end of 2020 after Boris Johnson kind of reignited just this week, once again, fears of a no-deal Brexit. How do you bring these things together whilst we're talking about central banks, the role of the BOE with the free trade agreement, the FTA negotiations set to take centre stage next year?
Well, the BOE, again, is targeting a particular inflation rate. The inputs to that are they are various, but one of the things that the BOE will have noted is that because it appears that no deal, or the markets felt that no deal was being taken off the table, sterling has strengthened, and the UK being a fairly import-dependent economy, that is going to relieve inflationary pressures. So it may be that it's rational to expect that they are in a position to lower interest rates. But at the same time, I think the BOE would look at its mandate for monetary policy alongside what's happening to fiscal policy, and we will know a great deal more early in the new year about the new government's plans for fiscal expansion. And I think that you could then posit that the likelihood you would get a massive fiscal easing and a monetary easing at the same time, as the probability is rather low. Okay, thanks very much, Stephen. Thanks for joining us. Stephen Macklow-Smith, International Equity Group Market Strategist at JP Morgan Asset Management.
Coming up next, you'll hear Bloomberg Daybreak on Sirius XM 119. If you're listening on London DAB Digital in the city, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance. This is Bloomberg.
Inovalon is a leading provider. How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, It's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, December 18th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
Shares of FedEx slump as the company cuts its outlook.
PG&E shares surge after winning approval for wildfire settlements.
Fiat and Peugeot get one step closer to completing their tie-up.
And Tesla makes plans to cut the price of its Model 3 by at least 20%.
President Trump lashes out at Speaker Pelosi as the House votes today for impeachment. Plus, New York City launches a plan to combat homelessness. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The Knicks won by 23 at the Garden over Atlanta. The Nets won in overtime in New Orleans. The Islanders lost to Nashville.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
And good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are little change to start the day. We're coming up to 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 2.5 points this morning. Dow futures up 23. NASDAQ futures up 7. The DAX in Germany is little change, down less than 0.1%. CAC in Paris up 0.2%, and the FTSE 100 is up about the same. Nikkei 225 in Japan was down 0.6%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong up about 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 3/30 seconds, yield 1.86%. Yield on the 2-year 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1% or 58 cents at $60.36 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $2.70 at $14.8330 an ounce. The euro 1.1134 against the dollar. The yen 109.43. Nathan.
And Karen, we begin this morning with earnings from FedEx coming in far short of estimates. The company cut its profit forecast for the second straight quarter, prompting one analyst to call the results, quote, breathtakingly bad. Let's get more now from Bloomberg's Thomas Black.
You can't blame it all on the macroeconomy, and certainly there wasn't a lot to like in this report. They lost their Amazon business, which hurt their revenue, but they're also spending a lot of money to try to become more efficient at home deliveries. And for right now, it's painful because the revenue has been compressed because they lost Amazon and they're spending more. So this was a really bad quarter.
And it's showing up in the stock this morning. Shares of FedEx are down 7.5% in early trading.
Meantime, things are looking up for PG&E. The bankrupt utility has won court approval for 2 multi-billion-dollar wildfire settlements, but it's not a done deal. PG&E is still working to get California Governor Gavin Newsom on board with the agreement. David Baker has more from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
The company and the lawyers representing those wildfire victims are buying themselves more time to talk with the governor's office, talk with other stakeholders, and fine-tune the proposal that that they've got, hoping that they can come up with something that everyone can agree on.
Shares of PG&E are gaining this morning, up 14.5% in early trading.
Tesla might be cutting prices. Bloomberg News has learned the automaker is considering cutting the price of its China-built Model 3 by at least 20%. Let's get details now from Bloomberg's Emma O'Brien in Beijing.
Tesla will do this by sourcing a lot more of the components of these Model 3s made here in China locally. That includes one of the most expensive parts of these cars, which of course is the batteries. We've been talking to people over the past couple of months that say that Tesla has secured a battery deal with South Korea's LG Chem and, of course, CATL, the big Chinese battery giant.
With the move, Tesla hopes to gain an edge in China over BMW and Daimler, which are also targeting the country with electric vehicles.
Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot are taking the next step in their tie-up. The companies have entered a binding agreement for a 50-50 merger to create the world's fourth largest automaker. Bloomberg's Danny Berger has more from London.
We have PSA rallying today, but you have to imagine some of this is already baked into the cake. Even so, this is obviously going to create a gigantic auto conglomerate between Fiat and Peugeot.
The tie-up has shares of Peugeot up 1.5% in Paris, but Fiat Chrysler is slumping, down nearly 1% in early trading.
WeWork has obtained new financing backed by Goldman Sachs. The troubled company will get $1.7 billion in fundraising arranged by Goldman. Here with more is Bloomberg's Gillian Tan.
This credit facility itself frees up WeWork to spend on growth, to reinvest in the business, to really focus on its core office sharing business in its key markets that it's identified, and to eventually hit its goal of becoming profitable.
The move should free up roughly $800 million for WeWork. It's the first hurdle cleared by its biggest investor, SoftBank, as part of a bailout package that includes $5 billion of financing for WeWork.
Turning to trade now, the new North American trade agreement is one step closer to completion. A Democratic-led committee has sent USMCA to the full House, where a vote is slated for tomorrow. Congressman Roger Marshall, a Republican from Kansas, tells us the bill should give a big boost to farmers.
Well, I think number one is it gives us certainty. Mexico and Canada are our number 1 and 2 partners for most all of our agricultural products. It expands our markets into Canada for milk and eggs, probably more in line with what we've done on the technical side of things, bringing this agreement into the 21st century. The internet wasn't even invented when we did the NAFTA trade agreement. So really it's bringing it up to date. Most importantly, it gives us certainty.
At this stage, the USMCA can no longer be amended. After passage in the House, the Senate plans to vote on the measure in January.
Now, so far, it's a relatively quiet day in global markets. In Asia, overnight, stocks posted modest declines to hold near highs of the year. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Japan's Nikkei 225 index closed lower by 0.5% as disappointing data showed exports dropped for a 12th straight month in November. In China, the CSI 300 retreated 0.25% after flashing signs of being in overbought territory. Hong Kong's dollar rose for an 8th day against the greenback, its longest streak since 1987, as elevated borrowing costs keep the currency at the high end of the peg. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Juliet, thank you. In Germany today, business outlook is improving to end the year. German business expectations rose for a third month in December, with IFO's executive outlook measure hitting 93.8. That beat estimates and points to hope that the country's manufacturing slump may be nearing an end.
And in the UK, the pound is weaker today. There's fresh concern Britain could exit the EU without a trade deal, as Boris Johnson looks to strike an agreement in just 1 year's time. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is expected to put his Brexit divorce deal to a vote in Parliament as soon as Friday. Checking sterling right now, it is weakening against the dollar at 131.18. The euro is at 111.34 and the yen at 109.44. Futures pointing to a slightly higher open. This is Bloomberg. At 5:07 on Wall Street, let's check the latest world and national news now. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Nathan. With the House expected to make him just the third U.S. president to be impeached, President Trump is condemning Democrats in a blistering 6-page letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Bloomberg's Martin DeCarroll reports.
More due process was afforded to those accused in the Salem witch trial, says the president, adding in his missive to Speaker Pelosi, no intelligent person believes what you're saying. In remarks to reporters, Trump insisted his interactions with Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky were innocent.
To impeach the president of the United States for that
is a disgrace.
The president says he looks forward to a Senate trial, which may be brief. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shot down Democrats' proposal to call more witnesses to testify. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Demonstrators rallied in cities across the country yesterday to call for President Trump's impeachment and removal from office. More than 600 events calling for Trump's impeachment were scheduled to take place across the country. The House passed two giant spending bills providing $1.4 trillion to fund the U.S. government through September and avoid a government shutdown after current funding runs out Friday. The bill to fund defense-related departments passed on a 280-138 vote. The other to fund the non-defense agencies and extend the number of expiring tax breaks passed on a 297-120 vote. The bills are now headed to the Senate, where they are expected to pass. Congress is moving ahead with legislation that would raise the age to buy tobacco and vaping products from 18 to 21. The sales restriction has the support of two unlikely backers, Marlboro cigarette maker Altria and e-cigarette maker Juul. The proposal comes in response to a surge in underage vaping by U.S. teens. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio announced a plan to combat homelessness. De Blasio is calling for more medical teams and a new command center that will direct more outreach workers to help the estimated 3,600 people living on the city's streets.
A single leadership location, the Joint Command Center, the Nerve Center, that will determine where people are on the street and make sure the outreach workers, the medical teams, all the support they need gets to them.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, not much was known about Mike Miller when the Knicks made him their interim head coach after the firing of David Fizdale. The feeling probably still is that the Knicks will seek a big name to take over, but in a small sample size, the Knicks have improved greatly under Miller. 3 wins in the last 4 games. They had a 1-point loss. They lost the game at Denver when they came from 21 down to take the lead. Last night at the Garden, the Knicks crushed the Hawks, 143-120. Most points the Knicks have scored in the regular season in 39 years. Miller asked about the bright spots.
It's difficult because there are a lot of positives. I'm really, really happy, for our team and the way they played and the way they're coming together with each day. They're doing a great job.
R.J. Barrett, 27 points. Mitchell Robinson had 23, both their career highs. Trae Young scored 42 for Atlanta. Nets in New Orleans blew a late lead, but still won in overtime, 108-101. That's the Pelicans' 13th loss in a row. Spencer Dinwiddie, once again, led Brooklyn, 31 points. Coliseum, the Islanders had a 3-1 lead. Back came Nashville, finishing the game on a 7-0 run. Worst loss of the year for the Isles, being 8-3. College hoops doubleheader at Barclays. Princeton topped Iona in overtime. Florida blew out Providence by 32. Evan Ingram, the Giants' talented but often injured tight end, will not play the last 2 games. Jets safety Jamal Adams named to play in the Pro Bowl, the only Jet or Giant to make it. The Ravens had 12 Pro Bowl players named. The Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
And John, in other sports news, Major League Soccer is coming to Charlotte. The team was awarded an MLS expansion yesterday. It'll begin playing in 2021. The new Charlotte team is owned by David Tepper, who also owns the NFL's Carolina Panthers. Futures pointing to a quiet start for trading on this Wednesday morning. S&P futures are higher by 3 points. Dow futures up 22. NASDAQ futures a gain of 8 points. The 10-year's up 3/30 seconds, yield 1.86%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply to you. How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Dear Dad, Merry Christmas. Thank you for always doing everything you could to make this time of year special for us. No one has a Christmas jumper collection quite like yours. Your festive spirit is...
Gingerbread latte with 2 shots and nutmeg whipped cream for Joe.
I hope it snows. I know how you love a white Christmas. All my love, Joe. Heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app and get 20% off when you buy a card and gift this Christmas. Use code Heartfelt20. Exclusions apply.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Back to throw. Fires right on the slant. Caught. Touchdown.
He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown.
This Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the lights shine bright on the Las Vegas Bowl. Washington Huskies head coach Chris Peterson will coach his final game before retiring as he takes on his former school, the Boise State Broncos.
Down to the 5. He leaps for the end zone, and he is in.
To listen to this and every bowl game, just search college football today.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs on Bloomberg Technology.
Apple Wallet, Uber Money, Google checking accounts. It seems like everywhere you look, big tech is getting into the financial services game. So what's that trend doing to fintech? Enrique Dubagras is here to answer. He is the CEO of Brex. The company minted itself a unicorn this past summer with a valuation of $2.6 billion. Enrique, welcome to the program. And I wonder, as you sort of take a look forward, given how big competition is, how competitive this space is, where do you see the next sectors in terms of the biggest opportunities?
So I believe that there's a clear distinction between distribution and actual innovation in financial services. I think a lot of the big tech companies, what they're doing is just creating new distribution channels for existing products. So, for example, Amazon's credit card is issued by JP Morgan and American Express. And, I truly believe that if there's no technology development in the back end, it won't change much. I think a lot of the opportunity are for both fintech firms and non-fintech firms that actually rebuild the technology behind it and don't use the technologies built by the bank.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. A bit of a mixed picture across global markets as equities hover near records and investors await more clues on trade in the global economy. European stocks are edging higher. U.S. stock index futures, they are as well. The pound is slipping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 3 points. Dow futures up 26. NASDAQ futures up 9. The DAX in Germany's down 0.1%. 10-year Treasury up 3/30 seconds. Yield 1.86%. Yield on the 2-year 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.9% or 54 cents at $60.40 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $2.90 at $14.8340 an ounce. The euro at 1.1133 against the dollar. The British pound at 1.3108 and the yen 109.44. General Mills and Micron Technologies are among companies scheduled to report earnings today. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi prepares to gavel in the full House today to vote on President Trump's articles of impeachment. Meanwhile, in a scathing 6-page letter to Pelosi, President Trump slammed impeachment, calling it an illegal partisan attempted coup, and accused Pelosi of declaring open war on American democracy. The Democratic-controlled House has passed a $1.4 trillion government spending package, handing President Trump a victory on his U.S.-Mexico border fence. It also gives Democrats spending increases across a swath of domestic programs. In sports in the NBA, the Knicks and Nets won. In the NHL, the Islanders lost. The Bruins lost in overtime to the Kings 4-3. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Our guest this morning, Stephen Gallo, head of European FX strategy at BMO Capital Markets. And I got to think, Stephen, in your world, the big story, given the relative lack of volatility in currency markets over the last couple of weeks, has got to be the pound. Where do you see sterling going, given all the political back and forth we've seen just this week after the election?
Sure. Good morning. I think that's a good question, and I think that the outlook for sterling going forward very much hinges on elements of the global trade environment, not just the UK economy and the UK-EU trade environment. We have the 3 to 6 month profile for pound dollar, that is, as we call it, cable, going lower over the next 3 to 6 months, on the view that the trade negotiations going forward between the EU and the UK are not always going to go very, very smoothly. But I also have to say, looking at a broader European picture, we also think that there's a reasonably high risk that trade tensions between the EU and the US could escalate in 2020. We're not incredibly or entirely certain about the degree to which those trade tensions will pick up, but we think they're very much there lingering in the background, despite the fact that global investors look like they're going into 2020 with some reasonably high hopes about the global economy, etc.
Although at least in the short term, we've started to see some pickup in business confidence, particularly in Germany of late. Does that give currency traders a reason to give the euro a second look, at least in the short term?
Well, I think that's a fair point, and I think that the dollar hasn't been stronger because of the fact that investors are looking ahead towards 2020 with reasonably high expectations, and they've seen some stabilization in the manufacturing data, which of course very much affects an export-dominated economy like Germany. I have to say, though, from a political perspective, I think the level of euro-dollar now, what is it, 111 and change, I think it grossly understates the degree to which there is a lot of conflict, political conflict, lingering underneath the surface in Europe. I think 2020 is going to bring a year, and 2021 they're going to be years where you see conflicts between the European Commission, that's the EU executive, and also and member states, and also conflicts between individual member states of the European Union, in addition, of course, to the Brexit factor.
How is that conflict affected if the U.S. is able to reach a trade deal with the United Kingdom once it resolves Brexit in some way?
Well, I think that's another great question. I think that if the UK and the US can strike a comprehensive free trade agreement relatively quickly, or even just the outline of a comprehensive free trade deal to be finalized in further at later dates, I think it opens up the door very much so to a more flexible European community, a European community which is based more so on the trade decisions of individual nation states, as opposed to trade policy that is directed from a single centralized source. And I think you're going to see this regardless of how the UK and US trade negotiations play out. You're going to see philosophically a lot of conflicts in the European Union, the EU 27, between politicians and policymakers that want the EU to be more adaptive and flexible, and then of course between them and the ones that want the EU to be less adaptive and more centralized. And then of course there's an even deeper conflict amongst the voices that want a more centralized EU. Well, the question is, on which terms is that centralization going to occur? Is it going to occur on French terms, German terms, Italian terms? Whose terms is it going to be centralized under? So I think that there are a lot of conflicts, regardless of how the US-UK trade negotiations go in 2020 and 2021, if they extend it to 2021. And I think there are a lot of political conflicts that are lingering under the surface in the European Union, and they're only one or two steps away from a complete power vacuum. So, for example, if the political situation in Germany deteriorates enough, if the political situation in Italy deteriorates enough, or France, or if a conflict between France and Germany erupts, they're just one step away from that sort of a situation.
It's going to be a fascinating 2020 to watch. Stephen Gallo, thanks for this. Stephen Gallo is head of European FX strategy at BMO Capital Markets. And just taking a look at the snapshot of European currencies against the dollar, the euro is showing some weakness at 111.33, and the pound weaker against the dollar at 131.02. Futures for equity markets are slightly higher. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Peugeot and Ram Trucks will be sharing a garage now that PSA and Fiat Chrysler have agreed to combine in a deal that would create the world's fourth biggest automaker. The deal will give PSA a long-sought presence in North America and should help Fiat gain ground in developing low-emission technology. Shares of FedEx are moving lower in pre-market trading after the shipper cut its profit forecast for the second straight quarter. Weak international demand is hurting sales, and FedEx has had to spend more money to handle more e-commerce deliveries. New York Life has agreed to acquire a business from Cigna that sells non-medical insurance products to employers. That's according to the Financial Times, which says the deal is worth more than $6 billion. Stock futures slightly higher. S&P futures up 3, Dow futures up 21. A very small step higher for stocks yesterday was enough to create a new round of records. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/award.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Cutting for the net, scores! Along the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Back to throw, fires right on the slant. Caught, touchdown.
He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
This Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the lights shine bright on the Las Vegas Bowl. Washington Huskies head coach Chris Peterson will coach his final game before retiring as he takes on his former school, the Boise State Broncos.
Down to the 5, he leaps for the end zone, and he is in.
To listen to this and every bowl game, just search college football today.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are little change to higher this morning, a day after stocks eked out a gain to close at a fresh record. Europe's stock 600 is currently up almost 0.2%. Equities in Asia saw modest declines overnight, but remain near highs of the year.
The shares of FedEx are down more than 6% in early trading after earnings missed estimates. The company also cut its profit forecast for the second straight quarter. We get more from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Weak international demand hurt sales, and the company is ramping up investment to handle soaring e-commerce deliveries. FedEx was also reeling after Amazon heightened competitive tensions this week by banning third-party sellers from using the courier, citing poor service. Beyond ongoing weakness in Europe and Asia, FedEx's sales were also hurt by the late timing of the peak holiday season, which began after the quarter ended this year. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Charlie, thank you. Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot are taking the next step in their tie-up. The companies have entered a binding agreement to combine in a deal to create the world's fourth biggest automaker.
Tesla might be cutting prices. Bloomberg News has learned the company may cut the price of its China-made Model 3 sedan by 20% or more next year.
Shares of PG&E are up 15% in early trading. The bankrupt utility has won court approval for 2 multi-billion-dollar wildfire settlements. PG&E's full restructuring plan still has to win approval by California Governor Gavin Newsom.
Coming up today, we get earnings from Micron Technology, General Mills, and Paycheck. Here with a look at Micron's upcoming report is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Analysts are forecasting a good year for the memory chip maker, though most of the gains are expected to come in the second half. Bloomberg Intelligence says first quarter sales are expected to show seasonal strength, followed by weakness in the second quarter. Wedbush and Needham raised their price targets on the stock ahead of today's earnings release. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thank you. On the economic front, German business expectations improved for a third month in December. The IFO Institute said its measure of executive outlook rose to 93.8, exceeding most estimates in a Bloomberg survey. Now let's get you up to date on how stocks are faring. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 2.5 points this morning. Dow futures up 21. NASDAQ futures up 7. The DAX in Germany's down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 4/30 seconds, yield 1.86%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.9% or 54 cents at $60.40 a barrel, and COMEX gold is up 0.2%. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. It's 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Demonstrators rallied in cities across the country to call for President Trump's impeachment and removal from office. The House of Representatives is expected to vote to impeach him today. More than 600 events calling for Trump's impeachment were scheduled to take place across the country. In a scathing 6-page letter, President Trump accused House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of violating her oath. Trump was asked whether he takes any responsibility for his likely impeachment.
No, I don't take any. Zero, to put it mildly. They took a perfect phone call that I had with the president of Ukraine. An absolutely perfect call. You know it. They all know it. Nothing was said wrong in that call. To impeach the president of the United States for that is a disgrace, and it's a mark in our country.
As House Democrats prepare to impeach President Trump, lawmakers took care of other urgent pieces of legislation. Bloomberg's Martin DeCarroll reports.
The federal government will be funded for the rest of the fiscal year under a pair of bills totaling $1.4 trillion in spending. They were passed by the House, now head to the Senate, and President Trump has indicated he'll sign them to avert a government shutdown. Lawmakers voted to raise the legal age to buy tobacco and vaping products to 21. And a key House committee advanced the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Pact. A full House vote is slated for Thursday. In Washington, Martin DeCarroll, Bloomberg Daybreak.
The Trump administration plans to beef up enforcement of Iran sanctions with a plan to increase pressure on global shippers and exporters of raw materials used in metal production. According to 2 U.S. officials familiar with the situation, it's the next phase of President Trump's bid to squeeze Iran's economy so hard that the government has no choice but to negotiate new limits on its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announced an initiative promising to end street homelessness as we know it.
So we announced today 1,000 new safe haven beds for the homeless people of this city so we can get them in and get them safe.
De Blasio is also calling for more medical teams and a new command center. A new survey from the University of Michigan shows about 1 out of 5 high school students in the U.S. have vaped marijuana in the past year. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. It's coming up to 5:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, the Knicks were the worst team in the NBA last season and again this year, but no longer. There are actually 4 teams now with worse records. One of them was at the Garden last night in Atlanta. No match for the suddenly improved Knicks, who've won 3 of their last 4. Knicks with a 41-point first quarter. They had a 21-0 first half run. They led by 31 at one point. The final was 143-120. That's the most points the Knicks have scored in a regular season game since 1980. Rookie R.J. Barrett, 27 points. Marcus Morris and Mitchell Robinson both had 22. Another team worse than the Knicks, the Pelicans. They lost their 13th game in a row. The Nets needed overtime, but pulled it out in New Orleans 108-101. The Brooklyn coach is Kenny Atkinson.
Wasn't exactly great flow to the game, but our defense again saved us, and collectively great job on Ingram, great job on Holiday, getting their percentages down. I thought J.A. and DJ were monumental at the rim. When they did come to the rim, I thought we did a great job protecting it. Offensively, we made some plays at the end. Joe was big. Obviously Spencer downhill. We really had to work for this one.
Spencer Dinwiddie led the Nets 31 points. Joe Harris had 24. Lakers played without Anthony Davis, suffered just their 4th loss of the season, beaten by Indiana 105-102. The Islanders lost in regulation for only the 8th time, far and away their worst defeat. Nashville won at the Coliseum 8-3. High hopes this season for Seton Hall, but the Pirates have lost 2 in a row. Just had a lopsided loss to Rutgers, and they have fallen out of the top 25. And now Seton Hall star player Miles Powell in concussion protocol won't play tomorrow against 7th-ranked Maryland. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
Thanks, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street. The latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now with a cover on how Silicon Valley is using smart devices to listen to your most intimate moments. Austin Carr wrote the story for Bloomberg Business Week.
One contractor described an instance of just a father and son having a conversation after school and how that can feel so invasive. They have no business recording this material and let alone transcribing it.
You can read more about this and other stories in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go and listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly weekdays at 2 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio. It's 5:38 on Wall Street. Time now for the Tri-State Business Report. Here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
Nathan, a New Jersey bill aimed at easing the impact of the federal cap on state and local tax deduction is headed to Governor Phil Murphy for approval. It would give S corporations, LLCs, and other business partnerships the option of paying state income tax directly at the entity level as a business tax instead of at the partner level as a personal income tax. Vornado, the Real Estate Development Trust, is re-tenanting a retail building at 715 Lexington. New York Post says Santander Bank and Orange Theory Fitness may have signed deals to fill the ground space floors that New York and Company and Zales have vacated. Riverfront Recapture, a nonprofit that runs the Hartford area's riverfront park system, is reeling from an unexpected budget cut by one of its big revenue streams. The Metropolitan District Commission has voted to cut its budget for Riverfront Recapture by about 50%. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
All right, Ed, thanks. It's 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WTVN in Columbus, I'm reporting that FedEx posted disappointing quarterly results after the markets closed yesterday.
I'm Steve Potusk, and on 1010 Wins in New York, we're looking at the big New York Life deal to buy Cigna's non-medical insurance business.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and on WCCO in Minneapolis, we're watching for earnings from General Mills.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting Fiat Chrysler and PSA have agreed to merge.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. And some other stories we're watching, a report of a big transaction in the insurance industry. The Financial Times reports New York Life Insurance will buy a business from Cigna that sells non-medical insurance products to employers at a price of more than $6 billion. In Japan, looks like Fujifilm may be making a bigger investment in healthcare. It's in talks to buy Hitachi's diagnostics imaging unit in a deal Nikkei News says is worth $1.6 billion. And Rupert Murdoch's Fox won't be running ads for Bombshell, the movie about the sexual harassment scandal at Fox News. Bloomberg News has learned the movie's producer, Lionsgate, wanted to promote it on the Fox network. Bombshell opens this weekend. Futures pointing to a slightly higher open this morning on Wall Street. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize-change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
At TUI, we can help you find the perfect getaway for two. We fly to over 70 destinations worldwide, so wherever you have in mind, we'll help you get there. Book now and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. Book online or in-store with one of our travel experts. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Offer available on selected holidays for a limited time and subject to availability. Booking T's and C's apply. At or protected.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Dear Dad, Merry Christmas. Thank you for always doing everything you could to make this time of year special for us. No one has a Christmas jumper collection quite like yours. Your festive spirit is...
Gingerbread latte with 2 shots and nutmeg whipped cream for Joe.
I hope it snows. I know how you love a white Christmas. All my love, Joe. Heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Download the app and get 20% off when you buy a card and gift this Christmas. Use code Heartfelt20. Exclusions apply.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
And then he later goes on to say that she is violating her oath of office, calls this an invalid impeachment, and says that she dares to invoke the Founding Fathers in pursuit of this, yet her spiteful actions display unfettered contempt for America's founding.
There's Caitlin Collins. The House today is expected to vote to impeach the president. A $1.4 trillion spending bill has been approved by Congress, a step toward averting a government shutdown.
Among other things, the bill includes some funding for President Trump's border wall. The Senate is expected to approve both packages before leaving for the week, and the president indicates he will sign the measures. Linda Kenyon, Capitol Hill.
On Wall Street Tuesday, major indices closed at record highs. The Dow rose 31 points. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are edging higher this morning. Little change to higher. European stocks are climbing as investors digest a flurry of corporate news amid a lull in trade war headlines. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 2.5 points. Dow futures up 22. NASDAQ futures up 6. The DAX in Germany's down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 4/30 seconds. Yield 1.86%. Yield on the 2-year 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil is down about 0.8% or 46 cents at $60.48 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $2.80 at $14.8340 an ounce. The euro 1.1136 against the dollar. British pound 1.3105, and the yen is at 109.46. And General Mills and Micron Technology among companies scheduled to report earnings today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, thank you. With House Rules Committee's roadmap planned out for the full House vote today, a historic vote on impeachment is now just hours away. After a procedural vote, House members will get one last chance to debate articles of impeachment for 6 hours, with time equally split between the parties. The final vote will be held immediately and is expected to pass along party lines. The U.S. conceded it won't be able to stop completion of the controversial Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, acknowledging the failure of a years-long effort to head off a perceived threat to European security. The $11 billion project is just weeks away from completion. In sports in the NBA, the Knicks and Nets won. In the NHL, the Islanders lost. The Bruins lost in overtime. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
And at 5:49 on Wall Street, it is time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. Columnist Marcus Ashworth joins us from our London bureau, writing this morning about UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's new fiscal plans and why he should issue ultra-long debt to finance them. Good morning, Marcus. Well, first off, what is the Johnson government proposing? It's a pretty ambitious domestic agenda, isn't it?
It's reasonably ambitious, yes. It's not quite as aggressive as the opposition was going for.
Right.
But nonetheless, there's no doubt about it. They're going to be spending an awful lot more, probably about £25 billion over the course of, well, each year, but over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. So that will require, obviously, issuing more debt as well. Presupposing the economy doesn't take all from greater extra taxes, which I'm sure they'd hope for, but the reality is that more debt is coming. Last time around, I think global crisis, they raised a lot more debt. They put it pretty much in the short end, just that was where liquidity was. But we're lucky in the UK, we've got a much longer average duration than, well, particularly compared to the US. And I think that's why, for instance, Steve Mnuchin is looking at possibly doing 100-year bonds and 50-year bonds in the US. A similar idea. We already have 50-year bonds in UK, but maybe they might go a bit longer. Look, I'm just floating an idea here. I think at the moment, the 2071 bond, which might get issued tap fairly soon, the demand there is not 100% secure. So I don't think there's any clamour for investors just yet. But it's one of these sort of things: build it and they shall come. And it needs a suite of other things around it: ability to trade swaps, futures, options, all the rest of it, hedging. Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a nightmare for primary dealers trying to hedge that type of risk. So it's an idea, and I think if they were looked at doing big infrastructure spend, which they absolutely need to in the UK, building lots of railway lines, north-south and east-west, of course, as well in the north. So airports, you name it, bridges, possibly even to a bridge to the continent, and even a bridge to Ireland has been mooted by our new Prime Minister. So you're going to need some money to fund it all.
Yeah, and are you thinking that there's a limited time horizon for the UK to take advantage of current ultra-low interest rates to issue a century gilt?
I'm not too worried about where gilt yields go. I think it's all relative. If more US Treasury bonds are being sold as they are, it looks like we might get more bunts in Germany. Pro rata, the UK always sort of shuttles between the two of them. I don't think it makes too much difference as long as it isn't a crazy amount of new supply. But I think gilt yields will stay low, and they are very low in historical terms. And therefore, there's clearly, for the issuer, it makes a lot of sense. For the investor, you're going to think all convexity, which is what a lot of long-end pension funds are after to hedge their portfolio. So there should be some demand, I would imagine, but it's, you need to make sure it's not a one-off, not an orphan asset and just gets left there. There needs to be a constant supply, and people know the market will be sort of tended to. And there should be a reasonable done. And might as well get on with it. No point in wasting time. I think that's exactly what Mnuchin thinks in the US as well.
Well, what's been keeping the UK from considering an idea like this in the past? What are the cons to it?
Well, the cons are you obviously are sending a message. You're locking in several generations into debt. And I think also it's like anything. It's a final frontier. People have gone out as far as 50 years. But, why go 100 years? There's not necessarily a logic to it. And obviously other countries have done it. Austria, Argentina, Mexico, Ireland, Belgium have all gone down that line. I think Sweden's looking at possibly as well. So there is interest there. It's just a question of matching really with your long pension fund and insurer demand that they want that type of assets to match their long-term liabilities. And the UK is a very developed market for that. So if any market could do it, it probably would be the UK. Certainly that's the difference from the US. The US, there isn't as much institutional need for long-dated asset liability matching.
Just a couple of seconds left. Is there a difference, though, between a big economy like the UK considering an idea like this compared to some of those other smaller economies you mentioned?
Well, that's my point exactly about it. It needs to be a regular auction process. It can't just be a one-off fund sort of thing that gets left as an orphan. This needs to be a proper treasury-backed program, quarterly auctions, and it's done in a way which is going to provide liquidity. Otherwise, it just becomes a nightmare for private dealers trying to hedge that stuff.
Bloomberg opinion columnist Marcus Ashworth, thank you as always. And you can read Marcus's column. It's called "Can I Interest You in a 100-Year Boris Bond?" and more from Bloomberg Opinion at Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It is time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The Internal Revenue Service is proposing regulations that would make it harder for public companies to evade a stricter limit on deductions for compensation paid to top executives. A settlement has been reached between Infosys and the state of California. Infosys will pay $800,000 to settle charges that it evaded state taxes by misclassifying workers. And General Motors has sued Hyundai Motor America, claiming Hyundai poached a top GM safety investigator who took trade secrets involving self-driving vehicles.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching. McDonald's winning a big victory over whether it should share responsibility for alleged labor violations in its franchisees' restaurants. For more on the ruling, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks with Merrick Masters, a business professor at Wayne State University.
This has been a long legal fight for McDonald's. How important is this decision?
Well, it is an important decision, I think, for two basic reasons. It has implications for the extent to which unions can organize a sizable fraction of the workforce, namely that fraction that is employed by franchisees, and that's about 8.1 million workers. The second, that reflects an overall pattern of recent activity on the part of the administration to expand managerial authority in both the private and the public sector, and this facilitates the process of raising the costs of union organizing and making it much more difficult for unions to get traction across the board. I think you have to look at this as part of a holistic process that is being used to make it more difficult for unions to organize, more difficult for unions to represent employees when they do have collective bargaining rights, and easier for employers to avoid unions to begin with.
The NLRB administrative judge rejected the proposed settlement as inadequate, but the 2-to-1 board ruling overturned her decision and approved the settlement. The union-affiliated group says it will appeal. What are its chances on appeal?
Well, I think, it could make its way up to certain levels of the federal courts. I mean, this is a kind of case that I think the administration would take all the way to the Supreme Court, and given the composition of the Supreme Court, I think it's quite likely that you might see the Supreme Court rule that McDonald's is not a joint employer as it would define a joint employer. It all depends on how you define a joint employer. If you define a joint employer basically as someone who has shared responsibilities, then almost any kind of employer in this relationship like McDonald's is going to be a joint employer. But if you're much more specific and say that they have to have direct and very much more than routine control over workers, then they are going to be considered to be non-joint employers in that particular type of analysis.
How big a loss is this for labor?
I think in the big scheme of things, it's not that big a loss because things are so bad to begin with.
And that's Wayne State University professor Merrick Masters speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures up 3 points. Dow futures up 25. NASDAQ futures up 8. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 1.86%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.62%. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influence.
Christmas. A time for sharing gifts and laughter. And photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, December 18th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
Shares of FedEx slump as the company cuts its outlook.
PG&E shares surge after winning approval for wildfire settlements.
Fiat and Peugeot get one step closer to completing their tie-up.
And Tesla makes plans to cut the price of its Model 3 by at least 20%.
President Trump lashes out at Speaker Pelosi as the House votes today for impeachment. Plus, New York City launches a plan to combat homelessness. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The Knicks won by 23 at the Garden over Atlanta. The Nets won in overtime in New Orleans. The Islanders lost to Nashville.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak, brought to you by Portfolio Analyst, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analyst to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Sign up for free at portfolioanalyst.com.
And U.S. futures are little changed to start the day. 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 2.5 points. Dow futures up 23. NASDAQ futures up 7. The DAX in Germany down about 0.2%. CAC in Paris up about 0.2%. And so's the FTSE 100. Nikkei 225 in Japan was down 0.6%. And the Hang Seng in Hong Kong gained about 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 1.86%. Yield on the 2-year year, 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.7% or 43 cents at $60.51 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $2.70 at $14.8330 an ounce. The euro 1.1134 against the dollar. The yen at 109.47. Nathan.
And Karen, we begin with earnings from FedEx coming in far short of estimates. The company cut its profit forecast for the second straight quarter, prompting one analyst to call the results, quote, breathtakingly bad. Let's get more now from Bloomberg's Thomas Black.
You can't blame it all on the macroeconomy, and certainly there wasn't a lot to like in this report. They lost their Amazon business, which hurt their revenue, but they're also spending a lot of money to try to become more efficient at home deliveries. And for right now, it's painful because the revenue has been compressed because they lost Amazon and they're spending more. So this was a really bad quarter.
It's showing up in the stock this morning with shares of FedEx down 7.5% in early trading.
Meantime, things looking up for PG&E. The bankrupt utility has won court approval for two multi-billion-dollar wildfire settlements, but it's not a done deal. PG&E is still working to get California Governor Gavin Newsom on board with the agreement. David Baker has more from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
The company and the lawyers representing those wildfire victims are buying themselves more time to talk with the governor's office, talk with other stakeholders, and fine-tune the proposal that they've got, hoping that they can come up with something that everyone can agree on.
And shares of PG&E gaining this morning, up 15.5% in early trading.
Tesla might be cutting prices. Bloomberg News has learned the automaker's considering cutting the price of its China-built Model 3 by at least 20%. Let's get details now from Bloomberg's Emma O'Brien in Beijing.
Tesla will do this by sourcing a lot more of the components of these Model 3s made here in China locally. That includes one of the most expensive parts of these cars, which of course is the batteries. We've been talking to people over the past couple of months that say that Tesla has secured a battery deal with South Korea's LG Chem and of course CATL, the big Chinese battery giant.
And with the move, Tesla hopes to gain an edge in China over BMW and Daimler, which are also targeting the country with electric vehicles.
Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot are taking the next step in their tie-up. The companies have entered a binding agreement for a 50-50 merger to create the world's fourth largest automaker. Bloomberg's Danny Berger has more from London.
We have PSA rallying today, but you have to imagine some of this is already baked into the cake. Even so, this is obviously going to create a gigantic auto conglomerate between Fiat and Peugeot.
The tie-up has shares of Peugeot up nearly 2% in Paris, but Fiat Chrysler is slumping, down more than 1% in early trading.
WeWork has obtained new financing backed by Goldman Sachs. The troubled company will get $1.7 billion in fundraising arranged by Goldman. Here with more is Bloomberg's Gillian Tan.
This credit facility itself frees up WeWork to spend on growth, to reinvest in the business, to really focus on its core office sharing business in its key markets that it's identified, and to eventually hit its goal of becoming profitable.
The move should free up roughly $800 million for WeWork. It's the first hurdle cleared by its biggest investor, SoftBank, as part of a bailout package that includes $5 billion of financing for WeWork.
Turning to trade now, the new North American trade agreement is one step closer to completion. A Democratic-led committee has sent USMCA to the full House, where a vote is slated for tomorrow. Congressman Roger Marshall, a Republican from Kansas, tells us the bill should give a big boost to farmers.
Well, I think number one is it gives us certainty. Mexico and Canada are our number 1 and 2 partners for most all of our agricultural products. It expands our markets into Canada for milk and eggs, probably more in line with what we had done on the technical side of things, bringing this agreement into the 21st century. The internet wasn't even invented when we did the NAFTA trade agreement. So really it's bringing it up to date. Most importantly, it gives us certainty.
At this stage, the USMCA can no longer be amended. After passage in the House, the Senate plans to vote on the measure in January.
Well, so far, it's a relatively quiet day in global markets. In Asia overnight, stocks posted modest declines to hold near highs for the year. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Japan's Nikkei 225 index closed lower by 0.5% as disappointing data showed exports dropped for a 12th straight month in November. In China, the CSI 300 retreated 0.25% after flashing signs of being in overbought territory. Hong Kong's dollar rose for an 8th day against the greenback, its longest streak since 1987, as elevated borrowing costs keep the currency at the high end of the peg. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Julia, thank you. In Germany today, business outlook is improving to end the year. German business expectations rose for a third month in December, with IFO's executive outlook measure hitting 93.8. That beat estimates and points to hope that the country's manufacturing slump may be nearing an end.
And in the UK, the pound is weaker again this morning. Fresh concern Britain could exit the EU without a trade deal, as Boris Johnson looks to strike an agreement in just 1 year's time. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is expected to put his Brexit divorce deal to a vote in Parliament as soon as Friday. Checking sterling now, it is weaker against the dollar at 131.06. S&P futures higher by 2 points right now. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg. And it's 6:07 on Wall Street. We bring in Michael Barr for a check of what's going on around the world. Michael?
Thank you very much, Nathan. With the House expected to make him just the third U.S. president to be impeached, President Trump is condemning the Democrats in a blistering 6-page letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Bloomberg's Martin DeCarroll reports.
More due process was afforded to those accused in the Salem witch trial, says the president, adding in his missive to Speaker Pelosi, "No intelligent person believes what you're saying." In remarks to reporters, Trump insisted his interactions with Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky were innocent.
To impeach the president of the United States for that is a disgrace.
The president says he looks forward to a Senate trial, which may be brief. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shot down Democrats' proposal to call more witnesses to testify. In Washington, Martin DeCarroll, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Demonstrators rallied in cities across the country yesterday to call for President Trump's impeachment and removal from office. More than 600 events calling for Trump's impeachment were scheduled across the country. The House passed 2 giant spending bills providing $1.4 trillion to fund the U.S. government through September and avoid a government shutdown after current funding runs out Friday. The bill to fund defense-related departments passed on a 280-138 vote. The other to fund non-defense agencies and extend the number of expiring tax breaks passed on a 297-120 vote. The bills are now headed to the Senate, where they are expected to pass. Congress is moving ahead with the legislation that would raise the age to buy tobacco and vaping products from 18 to 21. The sales restriction has the support of 2 unlikely backers, Marlboro cigarette maker Altria and e-cigarette maker Juul. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio announced a plan to combat homelessness. De Blasio is calling for more medical teams and a new command center that will direct more outreach workers to help the estimated 3,600 people living on the city streets.
A single leadership location, the Joint Command Center, the Nerve Center, that will determine where people are on the street and make sure the outreach workers, the medical teams, all the support they need gets to them.
De Blasio also called for 1,000 new safe haven beds for homeless people. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, not much was known about Mike Miller when the Knicks made him the interim head coach after the firing of David Fizdale. The feeling probably still is that the Knicks will seek a big name to take over, but in a small sample size, the Knicks have improved greatly under Miller. 3 wins in their last 4 games. Pretty impressive considering they had lost 10 straight before that. Last night at the Garden, Knicks crushed the Hawks 143-120, shot 56%. The most points the Knicks have scored in the regular season in 39 years. Miller asked about bright spots.
It's difficult because there are a lot of positives. I'm really, really happy, for our team and the way they played and the way they're coming together with each day. It's they're doing a great job.
Rookie R.J. Barrett, 27 points. Mitchell Robinson had 22. Both are career highs. Trae Young scored 42 for Atlanta. The Nets in New Orleans blew a late lead, but still won in overtime, 108-101. The Pelicans' 13th loss in a row. Spencer Dinwiddie again led Brooklyn with 31. The NBA announced former Commissioner David Stern remains in serious condition in Mount Sinai Hospital. He had surgery last week after a sudden brain hemorrhage. Coliseum, Islanders had a 3-1 lead. Back came Nashville, finished the game on a 7-0 run and won 8-3. College hoops doubleheader at Barclays. Princeton topped Iona in overtime, and Florida blew out Providence by 32. Evan Ingram, the Giants' talented but often injured tight end, will not play the last 2 games. Jet safety Jamal Adams named to play in the Pro Bowl, the only Jet name. There were no Giants. The Baltimore Ravens have 12 players heading to the Pro Bowl. For the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
And John, looks like Major League Soccer's coming to Charlotte. The city was awarded an MLS expansion team yesterday. It'll begin playing in 2021. The team is owned by David Tepper, who also owns the NFL's Carolina Panthers. S&P futures higher by 2 points. Dow futures up 19. NASDAQ futures a gain of almost 6 points. Little change across the board for equity futures this morning. Stay with us. You are listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish